It all explodes out of nowhere and Lot just freezes in stunned silence, blurting, "What did you just say?" Arnold locks eyes with her and tells her point-blank that she has to get out of the party. That's a brutal hit. Those four forge the Crimson Fang as one team, with Ants swinging as the brawler and Lot serving as the apothecary. With Kurt the magic swordsman and Arnold the hero by his side, they've been fighting this battle for 2 straight years. Lot can't process it after all that grind. They finally hit the top as an A-rank party, and she completely snaps, screaming at the top of her lungs. Arnold doesn't even sweat the "why now," he just deadpans that it's obvious and asks if he really has to spell it out. He slumps on his hand, all bored, and growls that she just drained the team way too much money. Arnold keeps pressing her, demanding to know if she even understands how much cash they're burning on the medicines he's making for her. Lot tries to tell them, "We only need those meds because you idiots keep going crazy." But Arnold shuts him down. Recklessness is just part of the job, and Lot just locks eyes with him, absolutely seething that he'd say something that clueless. Lot reminds him, "You only had to brew thousands of potions because they keep sprinting in with zero plan." But Arnold just scoffs at her, telling her she'd better be grateful for scraps while she's comfy and safe doing nothing. He points out that Mary is nothing like before, because she's a saintess who heals people with her own magic, and it basically changes everything. Lot looked utterly wrecked when Arnold snapped, asking if she finally got it, because they didn't just not need her, they straight up didn't need her at all. Even after busting her tail for everyone, Lot finally snaps, she's hit her limit, and she snaps right back and tells Arnold he doesn't need to say it again. She storms out, yelling that she's quitting on her own terms and refuses to stay in a party full of idiots. Then she signs the paperwork and officially cuts ties for good. By the time the next day hits, the sun blazes over the castle walls and just as Lot is about to step out, she's already decided. She's ditching Rurupu for good and starting fresh. Lot drags her things out of the city, staring ahead like her next move is a brand new empty page, but she tells herself she's got enough skills in her pocket, and if she plays it smart, work is coming. Then she smacks her own cheeks, steals herself. Pauses for a split second as a realization slams into her, because she suddenly understands that. Turns out Kurt wasn't even there when it all went down, he was out working. So she never got the chance to say goodbye to him because he was a slightly strange magic swordsman and he's only 17, just 1 year younger than her. Even with that wild age gap, they surprisingly hit it off, and every time they hung out, it just felt right. She can't stop wondering if everything would have gone sideways in a totally different way if he'd shown up and stepped in. But the gate guard flashes a warm nod, wishing her safe travels as she confirms she's heading out and readies herself to leave for Goodwin. When a voice suddenly explodes behind her, screaming her name, she whips around in pure, stunned disbelief. Kurt stands there, wheezing and drenched in sweat, grinning like he just barely saved the day, because he caught her before she walked out. Kurt gasps for air and tells Lot to give him a second, but rage still flares in him. He woke up and found out she was already gone, and it hit him hard. Lot drops her gaze, crumbles with guilt, and quietly apologizes. She apologizes to him again, but then hits him with the truth. Because she's sorry, she has to tear herself away and leave this town for good. Kurt locks eyes with her and demands to know if she's really never coming back to that party. She just shuts him down flat, telling him she's done. Suddenly, Kurt snatches her shoulder and beams, telling her it's a huge relief that she's okay. Which leaves Lot totally baffled as he blurts, "Thank goodness," again and again, like he can't stop. He flashes a peace sign, grins like it's nothing, and casually drops the bomb that he quit the party too. Lot totally snaps and demands, "You serious?" But he just shrugs and says hearing those other guys talk really lit a fire under his rage. So he said nope and slipped away from them for his own reasons. Kurt locks eyes with her and fires off a ton of questions, begging to know if he can just tag along with her. Kurt blurts out that going solo is basically suicide with monsters and bandits lurking everywhere, so he locks eyes with her and vows he'll tag along, come hell or high water. Lot admits he's got a point and that having him around would feel comforting, but she still presses him. Why would he even want to show up? And he just shrugs it off like there's no reason. He decides to stay with Crimson Fang, because if she's not there, then who is? He stares at her with deadly seriousness and says, "One of them is way more charming than all those other 3 put together." like, even if they teamed up. Lot just smirks to herself, convinced there's no way he's being serious about that. The two of them start sprinting north on the main road, kicking off their run toward the trading city of Rimuru. Lot says the monster rank around here is so low they don't even bother with holy water, and she finally leans in and tells him, yeah, take me up on that, let's travel together. As they stroll, Kurt can't help but feel it. This has been way too long since it was just the two of them, alone like this. A violent growl tears through the quiet, and Kurt's stomach starts screaming for food. So Lot shoots him a look and asks if he's hungry already, then points out it's barely even 10 a.m. And Kurt finally admits he's starving. He bolted out to find her without even grabbing breakfast, and that's when it leaves. Steve's Lot realizes he stumbled straight here after waking up with nothing packed. Kurt just shrugs and says he figured he'd hunt something nearby if things turned desperate. It finally hits Lot, so that's why he refused to touch the holy water, because he's basically been planning to chow down on every monster they stumble upon. Lot suddenly gets quiet, her heart thumping because Kurt went through all that just to catch up with her, skipping everything else for her, and she finally snaps, fully commits, and makes up her mind. A huge smile bursts across her face, and she decides to step up for Kurt, so then she tells him, stay right there just a second, then sprints out, and Kurt's left standing there, utterly clueless, shouting after her like, wait, are you serious about heading out there to catch a monster for me? Lot snaps at Kurt and calls it a stupid question, because there's no way she'd ever actually go toe-to-toe with a monster herself, but she straight up clarifies it. Kurt is the one they're hunting, and it finally clicks in his head. She flashes a huge grin and goes, alright, time to whip up some bait. So Kurt asks if holy water would just backfire, but Lot snaps back that it only does that when you use it the normal way. She starts pouring the liquid, then declares she'll add her own twist to the recipe, breaking it down step by step as she talks. So she's about to flip the part that usually scares monsters off, turn it into bait that yanks them straight into their trap. They'll heat the holy water until the magic bursts into the air, then mix in the rest with a secret ingredient, right before everything explodes into what happens next. And when Kurt demands where she's supposed to find something like that out here, she just shrugs and points at the thing she already has. She pulls out the trint seeds she's been clutching in her hands and shows him exactly what she's got, because those seeds are special. They're the go-to favorite snack for every edible monster lurking around the highway. Lot tells her that once she grinds the seeds into powder and welds everything together, the bait is finally finished. She looks totally fired up, raising that bottle like a trophy and celebrating like, I can't believe I actually pulled this off. Kurt tells her she's incredible for making it happen, and she just shrugs it off, saying it's all because of the mountains of research she poured into it. About an hour later, everything finally clicks. Kurt spots a horned rabbit, lunges, and snatches it out of the air, so they whip it up on the spot, and Kurt leans completely satisfied. He even smiles and says that meal was seriously amazing. Lot tells him she's thrilled he liked it, then yanks him back to reality. Come on, we've got to get going again pretty soon. Yeah, soon, though. Kurt glances at her, grins, and soaks in the peaceful moment they're sharing deep in the woods. They finally build a tiny campfire, kick back for a breather as the sun sinks lower, and once they finally hit the city, Kurt smashes the silence by grilling her. What's her deal? And is she really gonna keep playing adventurer? Lot admits she still hasn't locked in a plan, then straight up asks Kurt if he's really against her staying on with this wild adventure life. Kurt tells Lot she can choose any path and it's fine with him, but Lot stares back totally lost and snaps, wait, what are you getting at? He locks eyes with her and tells her, even if you quit adventuring, I'm still staying close, because I want to watch you work as a pharmacist, and he doesn't stop. He keeps pushing forward, telling her he knows she's worked harder than literally anyone he's ever laid eyes on. He swears it's the truth because he's been right there the entire time, watching her do it with his own eyes. Lot just stares him down, her heart tugging hard by everything he's done, and she can't help thinking she's genuinely so grateful they crossed paths. But Kurt suddenly hesitates, rubs his chin, and scrambles to figure out how to finish what he was saying. As Lot nods off beside him, his mind spins. He can't stop asking if she really trusts him this deeply, especially with it just the two of them out here in the woods. His thoughts yank him straight back 2 years ago to the first time he met Lot at that tiny house, right at the moment it all began, where she grinned at him, introduced herself, and lit up like the happiest person alive that she finally got to meet him. A younger Kurt flashed her a grin and told her, right then and there, that it was just as nice meeting her. Kurt stares at her, shocked that she hasn't changed one bit since the old days, and as he's always had this feeling she could totally dress up a bit more, and she still flashes that exact same smile. He starts rewinding his mind back to just 2 years after they first forged the Crimson Fang party, when the story was still fresh and the danger was already creeping in, where the whole crew finally conquered the ladders and ripped their way up to A rank. Now looking back, he swears every last drop of that success and all, and every bit of progress they made as a team, honestly, it all came down to her relentless hard work. Back when they first formed as a bunch of rookies, it was a brutal uphill fight, especially with a hero on the team, because the hero title is usually saved for the ones who are destined to rise as true legends. And the world sizes up that kind of potential by staring straight at one thing: your magic power, and how they carry themselves, shaped by their own unique fighter instincts. The magic you can truly learn doesn't come from luck. It all hinges on what you're born with, and the vast majority of normal people you run into, they only carry one magical affinity tied to their name. For most people, it's a rare gift. Only about 1 in 10 can wield 2 affinities. Tracking down someone with 3 affinities is brutal. It's the kind of miracle you might see once in 100 people, and if you've got 4 or more, people can't help but treat you like a hero. Kurt suddenly flashes back to that time. He just happened to be stuck in the very same town as the others, and right there, 2 ants and locusts just going about their days, living their little lives right up until Arnold finally showed up and, using his hero status like a golden key, invited them all to come together and form a party. 2 years crashed by after they teamed up as the Crimson Fang, but the quests they picked up kept escalating. Every single day they got thrown deeper into danger. Back in those days when the party's world started cracking and everything went to pure chaos. That medicine batch, yeah, the one they made, was the whole reason they stayed alive, plain and simple, turning her into the only A-rank pharmacist Kurt had ever even heard of. He honestly couldn't find anyone in the business who even came close to her. And once a party hits real wealth, they usually start buying potions non-stop, until the pharmacists wipe their hands and walk out. But Lot refused to quit. She busted her butt at work every single day up to her very last. Kurt knew she was the team's heart always. In every soft memory, her peaceful smile appears. She's right there, promising she'll be the one to protect Lot. The sun spills into the room, and someone rouses her with a warm good morning. Just a few days ago, Lot was still reeling from the shock of getting booted out of her own party. She had absolutely no idea her whole life was about to flip upside down. So fast it barely gave her time to breathe. But back at camp, she spots Kurt already awake and teases him for being up so early. He just grins and says he stayed wide awake during his watch. She's basically saying he's the kind of guy who pops up the second he senses bad vibes in the air, and now Lot starts to feel it. This is about to get way crazier than she ever imagined. They finally reach Rimmel Street, and Kurt immediately realizes their deal is about to blow up. Right then, Lot freezes mid-step when she spots something strange, and Kurt orders her to stay right by him and never stray. And the moment he notices the air reeking of her medicine, a brutal scream rips through the area. Lot whips his finger toward the commotion and fires a question at Kurt, and Kurt just nods, clear as day. There's no mistaking what's going on. They spot a guy getting pummeled by a dark blade, and snap, it isn't just a weapon at all, it's a magic sword burning everything it touches. The guy clutching it looks absolutely shattered, and he blurts out a desperate warning, "Come any closer." Dropping to his knees, he begged for help, and Lot's eyes widened. He recognized Yato instantly and demanded, "What's going on?" The girl yells, demanding, "Do you even recognize us anymore?" While Yato loses his mind and just shrieks at them to back off. That cursed magic sword starts shrieking, and Kurt yanks Lot back with all his strength before this thing turns into a full-blown nightmare. Kurt's eyes bulge as he snaps at Lot. She can't get any closer to that thing, and right then this mysterious figure storms in, orders everyone to freeze, and Kurt, off guard, is completely stunned. With the sword finally coming to a stop, Kurt rushes to Lot's side, checks if she's hurt, and she assures him she's okay. Everyone barrels over to Yato to make sure he's still standing after that brutal blade chaos. They move straight to the infirmary, and for once everyone finally gets to breathe easy. One of the kids turns to them and says, "Thank you for everything." The girl steps up and says, "I'm Isha," then drops that she's an E-rank adventurer, running with a crew called Gale. The guy beside her introduces himself as Shield, then turns to Lot and Kurt and asks if they're adventurers too. Lot blurts out their names, and the second they hear them, they clock it instantly. These two are fresh recruits to this whole wild adventure life. Kurt grills the kid, asking where in the world he snagged a magic sword like that, because those things are usually locked away in high-level dungeons. Shield says he found it in the Twilight Labyrinth, but that's insane. Only beginners go there, so it screams how clueless they really are. Kurt cuts straight through it, telling Shield to his face that he doesn't have the right foundation to swing around a weapon like that yet. He insists you master the basics of swordsmanship first, because magic swords just pump everyone's ego until they get way too cocky. Kurt leans in and tells the kid that magic sword, it always finds a crack in your heart, and it'll use it the second you slip. The kid just nods and blurts, okay, looking swallowed up by the whole lecture, while Isha stays right beside him in total silence. When Kurt looks back, it hits him. This had to be brutal for them, especially since he was strutting around like he owned the place earlier. But Lot just grins, saying she's relieved they managed to shut the rampage down before anyone got seriously hurt. It drags her back to that nightmare when she had to stop Kurt as a magic sword corrupted him, and the whole awful mess comes rushing back to her. Kurt catches her eye and shoots her a calm, "Don't worry," then keeps his cool as they slip right past all that chaos. Lot grins at Kurt and says that the screw-up he made back then is the exact reason he ended up becoming who he is today. Kurt's convinced she's right, and just like that, she flips the whole mood by spotting the perfect place where they can finally grab dinner. As they step inside, a loud voice erupts, clearly stunned, because Lot and Kurt just showed up. It's Mr. Gonzalez, and Lot breaks into laughter as he tells him, "You're still packed with that same unstoppable life." He asks about Lot's daughter, again thanking them for curing his old illness, and he can't help marveling at just how far they've grown. Then it hits him, he blurts out that an urgent letter just landed from the Lulup branch. He shoves the paper into their hands, confessing that some gut punch feeling told him the news was about to drag both of them into the spotlight. Once he read it, his patience snapped. He started screaming that it's totally insane to throw her out just over potion costs. Lot and Kurt just stare in stunned silence, realizing that an A-rank party splitting up has turned into a full-blown scandal that's rocking the guild. Mr. Gonzalez fires off a question about what she's doing next and pitches her opening her own shop, but Lot freezes. No license means she's not so confident. Lot grins and tells Mr. Gonzalez she already has her license, and his jaw drops when he can't even believe it and demands to know when she got it. Turns out that special first-class license is a huge deal. It lets him hawk potions at crazy high prices and snag rare meds way easier than before. Lot starts dreaming of a place of her own, but she knows she'll need a mountain of cash to get a shop up and running. She whips around to Kurt and fires off, "So what are you gonna do next?" since they're both freelancing for real now. Kurt meets her eyes and tells her he'll stay close and help her for a bit, because right now, he's got no other job waiting. Lot tells him that would be a massive help, so she wastes no time. She starts things off by whipping up potions to sell. Just as they're about to begin, Mr. Gonzalez calls out again, slamming in a brand new idea before anything even starts. He tells her, "Why don't you try teaching as a temp instructor at the guild for a while?" He tells you these training sessions are for every fresh rookie adventurer, but lately, they're going terribly wrong. So he pushes for Lot to teach them her go-to survival tricks, despite Lot arguing that Kurt would probably be the better pick for the job. Lot finally realizes that Kurt's pure natural genius makes him a terrible teacher for rookies. But Kurt just nods along and then drops the truth. Because she's smart and sharp with logic, she's basically tailor-made for the job. Lot finally snaps and agrees to give it a shot, and Mr. Gonzalez leans in, making it crystal clear he's putting everything on her to make it work. Right as they're sitting there, Lot suddenly snaps, remembering something huge, and blurts it out to Mr. Gonzalez. She lets it slip that she's heard fresh rumors. There's a magic sword showing up in the Twilight dungeon lately. That news hits like a truck because this is supposedly a beginner dungeon, and somehow they're all stuck in there. Mr. Gonzalez mulls it over, then drops the reality check. That place is acting way too weird for comfort. He tells them to track down the person from that party and get the full truth, exactly what happened, right from the source. And Lot agrees, pulling the details straight from them is the smartest move. But since they're at a restaurant, Mr. Gonzalez shuts out everything else and zeroes in on the food, then he orders pufferfish sashimi. The waitress rushes over, clearly on the edge, and tells them, since the head chef's down with sickness, they can't serve puffer fish. That's a total bummer because it's one of those regulated ingredients that only a pro can handle, so then Lot flashes a smile and tells them she's more than happy to prep the fish herself. Mr. Gonzalez nearly chokes on his drink, then blurts out how she could possibly know how to do something like that. So she reminds him she's an expert on venomous creatures, then jumps into the kitchen right away, and soon she sets down a plate of sashimi so flawless that everyone there is left utterly speechless. Lot shrugs like it's nothing, then grins and says it's actually easy as soon as you learn the trick, dragging Mr. Gonzalez into total disbelief, like, could she even smash a steel tuna this huge? He's certain it's impossible. But Lot just grins and tells him she can do it for sure too, leaving him totally stunned. After they finish eating, they huddle up to check the next workshop schedule, and they freeze when they see it's already locked in for tomorrow. Lot totally snaps, her glass rockets off her face as she screams that the workshop is tomorrow. But Mr. Gonzalez tells her, don't stress, it's only the afternoon, then throws in a place for them to stay and lets them use the whole shop. He flashes a cheerful thumbs up as he says goodbye, but Lot still looks like he's second-guessing whether staying the night is a good idea. The very next morning rolls in and Lot spots Kurt already awake, so she strides over, greets him, and Kurt turns back with a grin and wishes her a good morning too. Lot's still dragging herself around, whining that she's too sleepy, and Kurt finally fesses up that he's got the same problem. He stayed up late drinking, while the waitress rolls over with their menus. Right as breakfast hits the table, Lot drops the news. She already snagged some teaching materials from Mr. Gonzalez. Then she turns her head, eyes Kurt, and fires off the question, what's he planning to do with his day? She tells him Mr. Gonzalez wants him at the training ground for a favor, and you can practically see the life drain out of him. Right when they're wrapping up, a voice from nearby spots Lot and yells for her to come over. Lot leaned in again, scanning the details, then asked, wait, did I get her name right? It's Ixia, isn't it? Right after they plop onto the couches, Lot leans in and asks how the guy's holding up physically while he hands him something over. Then Ixia breaks into a huge grin and says he's doing great, all thanks to Lot's help. So Ixia spills that right now, both him and Shield are getting worked to the bone by Mr. Gonzalez. Lot breaks into a cold sweat when she realizes Kurt is probably trapped in the same mess with them. Ixia stared down, realizing she'd leaned on that magic sword way too hard, and a nasty part of her couldn't shake that she was partly to blame. So Lot leans in and asks her if the sword ever flashed any weird signs before it snapped into full berserker mode. Ixia can't stop replaying it. Yato would start trembling just a little every single time he unleashed the sword's power. And she admits it actually happened a few times, just yesterday. She finally snaps to the truth. She'd been way too optimistic, just because things looked okay for a little while. But Lot looks dead serious as she points out that the scariest part isn't the change, it's how fast you start getting used to it. Lot's face turns deadly serious as she tells you one brutal truth. Swing a magic sword that doesn't match your style and it can scramble your mind. So she orders Ixia to be extra careful from now on, and Ixia simply nods. Okay. For a split second, Ixia looks a little shaken, then she snaps her voice out to Lot. She asked Lot to teach her more about magic swords, and Lot was totally down, as long as Ixia was cool with starting by learning only the basics. After they finish talking, Ixia bows and blurts out thanks while Lot leans back like, I'm just happy I could help. The story cuts to a stack of paperwork and someone fires off, you mean the seminar this afternoon, right? And the reply comes back instantly, a quick, solid yes. Lot snaps to it out of nowhere. She completely forgot the whole thing. And then boom, she's the one who's actually supposed to give the lecture, and it absolutely floors Ixia. Ixia says they'll show up too, then bam, Gonzalez barges in, yelling that everyone's going, whether they want to or not. Ixia panics because time's running out, but Lot tries to act like it's all good, while she's clearly in a hurry the second she speaks. Yato clings to Kurt's arm like his life depends on it, yells that he's begging for a favor, and makes the whole place explode with his total scene. He keeps shouting for Kurt to take him on as an apprentice, but Kurt shuts him down hard, telling him to get lost for good. Lot stares at the wreckage, screams for Yato, and in the same breath thinks, Kurt is in deep trouble right now. Then Ixia whips around and blurts that she just remembered something important she has to tell Lot. Ixia locks eyes with Lot and tells her that everything he said before was shockingly persuasive. And because of that, she's honestly waiting on pins and needles to hear what Lot is about to spill during the lecture. Ixia flashes a huge smile, waves Lot off, and promises, catch you later at the event, before leaving. He leaves Kurt to stride over and start cracking jokes about the rough ride Lot's going through, then presses her, are you sure you're ready? It's almost time. Lot tries to brush it off and say she's fine, but the sweat pouring off her makes Kurt snap, wait, are you really okay? Especially since the lecture hall is packed, and everyone's been waiting on her to walk up to the podium. The lecture hall is a disaster zone, people are groaning that they're trapped there, while Lot just sits in dead silence like he's waiting for something to hit. And Yato blurts out that the whole room feels disgusting, and Lot snaps at him, don't let it get under your skin. Right then, some guy in the crowd pops up and starts blasting the rumors about Yato the Gale. He barrels on, muttering that Yato completely blew everything up yesterday, and that's why he's about to say something. Then more people pile in saying, that's just how it goes when a guy scrapes by on luck. They erupt into laughter about how only the real deal climbs to the top, and Lot can't stop herself. She keeps repeating it under her breath like it's stuck in her head. She glances at Yato, baffled that he stayed so silent while those guys spit trash talk then. But Yato just shrugs it off, talking like it's no big deal, telling everyone they can say whatever they want, and that's when you start to notice. Yato's actually changed a little lately. She realizes the old Yato would have taken one look and snapped instantly. Yeah, she hates to admit it, but that's probably exactly what would have happened. Yato tilts his gaze downward and it hits him. He finally realizes what an unbelievably incredible person actually looks like. Still stuck on how he couldn't land a single hit on that guy earlier today. It slams into him, this guy didn't even break a sweat, like he held back way more than half his real power. And that whole mess hits Yato like a brick wall. He finally sees just how small and helpless he is right now. But because of that, he's finally locked onto a real goal and found someone he can genuinely admire. The second Yato imagines a real path ahead. Fire ignites in him and he refuses to slow down. He says he's gotta earn enough to cover that fine first, while Shield keeps apologizing for every bit of trouble he caused. Lot just grins at him and waves it off, says it's totally fine because they're comrades, but Shield looks downright guilty, replaying how he dumped everything on Yato, and then he pauses like he's about to get caught, so he looks. He snaps his gaze away and murmurs quietly that he's sorry for how everything spiraled. A cocky grin spreads across his face as he beckons them, like he's about to kick off the whole thing. Come on. As Lot stands there, he blazes through the room and shouts that it's finally time to kick off the lecture. She flashes a bright smile, steps forward as their apothecary instructor for the party, but deep down, she can't stop thinking about how she went from getting kicked out of her group to now standing in front of a classroom, teaching like she belongs there. Shield's right there in the front row, cheering and clapping for her, so she doesn't slow down as she keeps going. She forces herself to quit spiraling over the random students glaring at her from the bleachers, then she cuts herself off. She wastes no time, she snaps into action and has everyone grab the handouts she just shoved into their hands. They're stressing that every single thing they're covering is life or death important, and they better drill it into their memory right now. But when she scans the crowd, she realizes only Shield, Ixia, and Yato are locked in, so she lets out a heavy sigh, realizes the teacher's act is falling flat, and decides to cut the lecture short instead. Lot bursts into the classroom with a huge grin, announcing that today's lesson is all about potions. So she's making it crystal clear, she's sticking to what she knows best as an apothecary. One dude in the crowd looks dead inside, grumbling that everyone already knows all this and asking why they're even wasting their time. Lot doesn't even blink, he whips his finger at a student and demands, so can you explain the real difference between a potion and healing magic? The guy explains that magic runs on mana, while potions are nothing but ingredients someone mixes, and Lot nods, giving him full credit for nailing it. She yanks up a chart and makes it crystal clear. Potions hinge on the herbs and the maker's skill, but magic lives and dies by the user's light affinity and their mana capacity. Then she finally gets to the real lesson. She leans in and tells the whole class it's about to get seriously important. He challenged them, why do you even bother using potions? And one student immediately burst out laughing. It's obviously only for healing injuries. He keeps his eyes locked on her and in his head he's like, wait, I finally get where she's taking this. While Lot lays it out, he basically says, people are clueless, because there are way more ways to use potions than anyone ever imagines. Lot snaps the whole class's attention, then announces she's about to rip through a live demonstration, right now. Now he blurts out to Shield, asking to borrow his beat-up shield for just a second, and it totally blows him away. She lifts her own advanced potion bottle up high and flashes it to the entire room before she yells for everyone to watch like hawks as she starts dripping the liquid onto the wrecked metal. The potion erupts in sizzling heat on the surface, and the students just stare because what they're seeing feels unreal. The shield erupts in a blinding flash, and in the next heartbeat, every scratch on the metal is gone. People freak out because they swear it only took a few minutes to turn that shield back into something brand new again. While Lot just grins, he tells them potions aren't just drinks, they're packed with wild, endless possibilities. She lays it out like her final punchline, and the whole class goes quiet. Then you can practically see the awe hitting them. The bell rings and Lot glances at the clock. Then he declares it's finally time to shut the day down. The class isn't ready for it to end. One student straight up complains that everything had just started getting good. But Lot just stares back with that calm, knowing smile, like she's got one last move locked in her head before. She speaks up one more time, slips out her last words for the group, and instantly, Child's attention snaps right onto her. She kicks it off by telling him, hey, this is only basic advice, just an adventurer talking to another. They tell you, no matter how wild the world gets out there, there's only one thing that counts: survive. The whole room freezes into silence, and Child just stares at her like those words punched straight through him. Lot keeps pushing through, saying things are tough right now, but they've got to stay strong, no matter how badly it hurts. They can't let failure stop. Sheld told them straight up, it's totally fine to look uncool while they're fighting through it. As long as they're the ones who get the final laugh when it's all said and done. She tilts her head and slips him a small, unstoppable smile. She ends with a sharp warning, don't overthink it, everyone's got a ceiling on what they can handle by themselves. Lot's voice shadows the kids as they head out, telling them loud and clear that friends step in for each other's weak spots and Kurt just smirks at it, saying that's exactly what a real party should look like. Back in the office, Gonzalez lights up and tells them they crushed the lecture, but the vibe flips fast when he slides in the details he dug up about that Twilight Labyrinth Lot they were asking about. Lot scans the papers and her jaw drops at what she's seeing. Gonzalez chimes in that it's seriously creepy since there's basically no damage recorded at all. It makes zero sense, especially with dungeon accidents going absolutely berserk lately, and everyone's been noticing. Gonzalez tells them he won't stop investigating, begs them to speak up the moment anything weird shows up, and Lot agrees. On the 5th day in town, Sheld can't stop replaying his progress in his head while Lot darts around, slammed with food orders. After she snatches her paycheck for the day, she realizes, holy crap, this side job is actually raking in real money. Kurt catches her working and cracks a joke about her becoming a chef, but she snaps back fast. He's got it totally wrong. The temp gig is almost done because Gonzalez just said the head chef is finally shaking off that sickness and will be back in the kitchen tomorrow. So that means Lot can finally break free and check out the Apothecary Guild she's been dying to explore. Kurt trails behind as they cross the city, but he keeps peppering her with questions because he can't shake the doubt that she actually remembers where they're going. Right as he asks, she spots it instantly and beams at him, pointing it out like it's the best secret ever. They step inside together, and the staff greet them with warm smiles as they take in their brand new surroundings. The shop was massive, and every shelf sagged under a wild wall of bottles, stacked to the brim with every kind of liquid you could imagine. Lot just freezes on the spot, completely stunned by how huge their stockpile really is. She starts geeking out over every ingredient and tells Kurt that with all this, she could whip up basically anything. Then she cuts herself off mid-sentence, staring across the room like she just spotted something wild, and Kurt's left scratching his head, wondering what's going on. She points to one jar on display, and her eyes widen as she realizes it's the newest work by Aizen. Lot is spiraling. She grabs Kurt and demands, how can you not know who this is? Because in the world of mortar designers, this person is basically a legend. While she's freaking out, finally seeing this masterpiece in person, Kurt shoots her a nervous question. So, how much does it really cost? He stares at the price tag and boom, his heart nearly drops as he realizes it's listed for $2 million, and he blurts out that it's absolutely insane how much it costs. But before they can argue, the shopkeeper barges in and says, if you've got an apothecary license, you get a discount. One moment she slides her card over, then the shopkeeper totally freezes when he spots that blazing gold. She's in total shock, screaming that there's no way this lot is real, because it's actually a special grade 1 apothecary. Even with that half-price deal, Kurt clocks that they still can't make it happen right now, so the shopkeeper throws out a different option. Asks if Lot would want to try the mortar on a test run, and Lot agrees on the spot. Lot bursts out that this is a total dream come true, then immediately starts lining up and prepping all her materials. With the tool gripped tight and a massive grin on her face, she shouts Lycoris and barrels into work. The door groans as it swings open and a voice blurts, "I've been searching everywhere for you," before they finally spot them though. As Lot whips his head around, totally baffled, the shopkeeper slams the news. It's Guild Chief Tetrod. Kurt's sweating pours out and Lot's brain seizes up as she keeps whispering the title over and over under her breath. The head of the pharmacist guild size checks them, eyeing them like, "What are you doing here?" because she's never laid eyes on them before. Lot blurts out a frantic explanation. She was just testing the mortar and she wants to know if she screwed anything up. But Tetrod just stares her down, then snaps at the guy she's with that she's way too young for him. Lot takes one look at that and snaps, calling it rude and firing off an explanation of who she really is. The chief snaps, telling her to stop fighting it for a moment, then just let go of his hand. Everything goes eerily silent as both of them lock eyes, frozen in pure shock. Tetrod finally glances at what Lot crafted and blurts out that it's beautiful, and there's Kurt, just stuck there, clueless about what's going on. Tetrod snatches Lot's hand and thrusts it right in front of her face, while Kurt roars from the back, furious, demanding to know what the hell she thinks she's doing to his friend. The guildmaster shuts him down and fixates on Lot's hand, praising her fingers as gorgeous and her joints as basically flawless, so Lot squirms and squeaks in sheer terror. Kurt is practically shaking with fury, roaring at her to let go, but Lot can't move, because she's still stuck on one wild fact: this strange woman is actually the head of the guild. Tetra doesn't even raise her eyes, she's just dribbling and mumbling that Lot's got the perfect golden ratio for an apothecary. Kurt has had it, his face darkens in an instant as he opens his mouth to say something. He snaps, screams at her to get her hands off Lot, and hammers her as a straight-up pervert for acting so damn creepy. Tetrod finally backs down and blurts out an apology for getting so intense, then turns to Lot and says she's free to use any of the Aizen tools. Boom. Lot's eyes light up and he can't wait to get started. Lot walks into work and instantly feels it. This quality is on a whole other level, so different from anything she's ever dealt with. She finishes the batch, holds it up, and asks if it looks right, while Tetrod just watches her with a smug grin, already thrilled that his eye for talent was dead on. Tetrod stares at the finished powder and groans that she may have cranked it a little too hard. Then she whips her head to Lot and asks if he can literally see the powder dancing in the air. Tetrod stares at the finished powder pile and says it's so blindingly bright that someone could actually go blind, so he makes it. It's obvious she's still dialed up, leaning in way too close to Lot, pressing that she's probably noticed the quality herself. Then she eases back, tells Lot, "For a first try, you did amazing," while Kurt just lingers in the back, clearly fed up with the whole mess. Lot keeps staring at her and in her head she's like, "I thought the guildmaster was a total pervert at first." But then she tells Tetrod, "I'm as sharp as a guildmaster should be," and that's when he snaps, "What's your name?" So Lot finally answers. Tetrod blurts out the name. The apothecary from the Crimson Fang party was Lot too, and Lot's voice cracks as she nervously confesses, forcing Tetrod to clock the truth. She points straight at Kurt and blurts, "So, is that you, the famous magic swordsman everyone calls the blood-soaked noble?" Kurt turns betrayed and tries to dodge the question, while Lot just stares like he's lost and blurts the same edgy nickname again. Then the guild staffer steps in and confirms without a doubt that it's him. She starts spilling his reputation, saying he dances through battlefield blood like a brutal, beautiful nightmare, and then she starts going on about how he's like a painting, calling him the young noble of fresh blood, while Kurt is dying of embarrassment, begging her to just use his normal name. Tetrod announces she's leaving right now and it shocks everyone, because they literally just arrived, so she quickly asks if. When the shopping trip finally ends, the shop staff rushes everyone over to the winter robes, and the only thing still swirling in his head is how totally wild Tetrod is. As they keep walking, the talk swings right back to Kurt, why he ditched that fancy party of his just to shadow Lot. Kurt leans in and says everyone already knows what Lot can really do. No Lot in the party means it's doomed, and he's already figured out the rest. So yeah, he's not done. I figured tagging along with her would be way more fun, and the moment he's around, he turns all jittery, blushing hard, trying to play it cool by saying it's not a complete lie, but it definitely isn't the whole truth either, though So his gut is screaming that this is bad news. Ever since Lot stopped rolling with that big crowd, he knows the moment the spotlight shifts, everyone's going to come hunting for her. And he doesn't need anyone to spell out the obvious, because that's the whole reason he's here. Protecting her is the mission, even while Tetrad stays in the back, roaring with laughter, teasing him non-stop with that edgy, crimson-blooded noble nickname, when he keeps begging her to finally stop using. Once the chaos dies down, Kurt exhales hard and Lot grins so wide she could light the room, saying she's just thrilled he finally tracked down a good robe. Lot asks if he wants to try something cuter for once, but he's not feeling it at all, so she launches into a full-on rant about how robes stretch perfectly and feel incredible against your skin. Lot is freaking out because after sleeping on it, she finally admits she needs that new item they saw. Kurt just stares at her, grinning like he can't help it, and deep down he clocks it. She's still exactly the same as ever right before he finally calls out her name. And he thrusts a tiny wrapped box into her hands, swearing it's a present he hunted down just for her, which it totally catches her off guard. She asks if she can open it right now and he tells her, of course, but the second she lays eyes on it, she panics and demands why he dumped so much money on something this pricey. While Kurt waves it off, insists she's not sending it back, and then he hands her. And he flashes her a gentle smile, swearing that if he can't do at least this much, he'll never repay her for everything she's done, and Scott's eyes water a little because even if she can't do it all alone, she's got friends who'll always step in and carry the load. She stares at the gift and suddenly realizes it's his way of saying thank you for everything. And when Kurt reaches out to brush her cheek, she grabs the moment and tells him she's grateful he never left her side, not through all that chaos. And it hits her hard at last. She's not alone anymore, not for even a second. Lot steals a second to herself, replaying that day in her mind, because it's the first time she ever truly felt this way, and later she's back in her zone, happily grinding out medicine with a laugh under her breath, until Kurt suddenly pokes his head in and tells her he heard her acting weirdly cheerful clear from the hallway. Lot blurts out what's happening and Kurt snaps back that Mr. Gonzalez wants to talk to them, but he's totally clueless about what it's even about. The two of them slide into seats across from the man, and he tells them they've finally carved out real progress in the Twilight Labyrinth. Mr. Gonzalez breaks the bad news. The dungeon's monster count has crashed hard. He's clueless why, but one nasty rumor is already spreading like wildfire. The folks in Gato's nearby village are dropping like flies, so he's begging them to track down the source. He ends it by promising real backup for the mission, and saying he's putting everything on them. Turns out the helpers are really Ixia and Shield. Shield pops in and waves at Kurt while Ixia steps forward and introduces herself the right way. Kurt blurts out why she's so stiff, and right when Shield asks if it's true, she drops the bomb. They were both Crimson Blade members. Ixia looks totally on edge and blurts out to Kurt that working with him is a real honor, but he brushes it off and tells her, don't stress about that. Shield tells Ixia she can drop the act and be casual too, then whips around to Kurt and asks what they should call the party, only for Kurt to shrug and say, whatever works. Shield gets all pumped up and proposes they fuse his name with Kurt's to brand themselves Yakult, but Kurt shuts it down instantly. Next up, we head to Guido Village, sitting southeast of where we are, an easy road most days. Right between the town and the village sits this huge forest, perfect for rookie training, except lately, everything's gone completely off the rails. Out of nowhere, a monster lunges from the trees, and someone yells that it's a lesser orc hunting for a fight. Ixia wastes zero time. She drops into a battle stance and snaps her staff into position to crush the threat. Shield yells for Ixia to move in, and she fires back a quick shout, I've got it, then locks in immediately. She shoves the orc to take it and starts up a fire spell right away, whipping her staff around to pull the energy into place. The orc erupts in a weird, shrill screech as Kurt yanks his sword free, ready to end this before the monster even gets a chance to react. Shield is totally losing it over how insanely cool Kurt is, and while Ixia just freezes in complete shock, she can barely scrape out a single word after watching him move. The crew plows deeper into the woods, swatting a killer bee, then smashing an evil ant right after, straight up tearing everything apart as they charge through. Ixia and Shield are getting smoked by the pace, and then Kurt swings around and snaps at them to speed it up now. Lot butts in and snaps at Kurt for going too hard, calling the whole thing pure overkill. Then Kurt just stands there, utterly baffled. She tells him to chill out so the rookies can finally get some real experience. then Kurt just rubs the back of his head and shrugs, saying it's his fault. Ixia brags that his demon sword power is absolutely unhinged, until the kid snaps the moment he realizes Kurt was never swinging anything special, just a plain old sword. Law tells Ixia that Kurt wears the demon's sword like a bracelet, because lugging it around would make him an obvious target, and then Ixia realizes the crazy part: it's actually shape-shifted. Staring at that bracelet, Ixia wonders if Yato can pull off the same kind of tricks, but Lot just shrugs and admits she has no clue. Lot tried to push Kurt into explaining how it works, but when he started rambling about the sword's breathing, it made zero sense, and Kurt's annoyance instantly flared. Kurt tells Lot that she's the one who makes zero sense, and that lights a fuse in her, because she fires back that she's far more logical than he'll ever be. Kurt gets so worked up he starts grilling her, demanding to know what she's even talking about, but she just stands there, huffs in annoyance, and makes it painfully clear she's done with him. Ixia immediately freaks out and blurts out an apology, insisting the comment just slipped out on its own. Then the two of them just freeze in that crushing, awkward silence. She powers through, calling it weird that no matter how different they are, they still click together like puzzle pieces made for each other. Lot shuts down the chatter and dives straight back into work. She orders everyone to stay razor-focused and move like lightning, and the rookies scramble and right behind her. They finally reach the village, and Chief Gildo welcomes them with open arms, then introduces his son, Ghidorah, who gives them a respectful bow. The crew finally drops into a seat to talk, and Gildo jumps in like, "You already know what it is. If things don't change, this whole village is headed for real danger." Lot stares him down and spots the struggle right away. Then he blurts it out like a warning, because even the chief is coughing hard now. She starts piecing it together. How do these people even live off monster materials when there are zero monsters left? Yeah, their money situation has to be an absolute disaster. Gildo orders them to handle it from here, but he can't stop hacking, so Lot steps in and offers to check on him after they're done. She drops the bombshell that she's a legit professional apothecary, and it leaves the chief utterly stunned. Gildo tells everyone he's already reached out to the church for help, and Lot immediately presses him like, "Wait, you mean asterisk the church? Because that's a huge deal." The chief tells them they've tracked down a saintess named Angelica, one who grew up right in the village, and that news hits Lot so hard he freezes, staring in disbelief at the name he can't stop hearing. With the thunderous hooves on the road rush toward the village, Lot can't stop thinking Angelica is the grand saint everyone talks about, ranked among the absolute best, and Lot demands to know when this legendary saintess is really supposed to arrive, and Gildo snaps back that her letter said she won't show up until at least tomorrow. Then crack, the door bursts open and a woman in armor storms in, shouting that she's finally home to see the chief. Her eyes bulge wide as she clocks who it is, then she gasps Angelica's name, staring in shock because the woman is already here. The woman just stands there, smiling like she owns the world, and Lot can't tear his eyes away because he's suddenly face to face with a legendary grand saint. Everyone's freaking out over how fast she is, but Angelica just shrugs and laughs. She went as quick as she could because she was terrified for everyone. She steps right up to Gildo and tells him he hasn't changed one bit, while he's clearly fighting for every breath with his health falling apart. She tells everyone to breathe, slow down, and chill, then swears that by tomorrow, her treatment will wipe out every single thing that's gone wrong. Angelica scans the group and instantly clocks it. The very people who came to investigate the village's problem are right here, until everything flips and she catches a whiff and recoils, this foul stench of mashed up ingredients, then turns to Lot and snaps, "Tell me you're an apothecary." Lot's thrown off by the sudden attack, but she snaps, "Yep, that's exactly me," and then Angelica snaps at her to get out of the village right now, claiming they want nothing from her kind as long as a saint is still here. Lot isn't backing down. He tells her straight up they've got a specific job to investigate the dungeon, and they're not leaving especially. She's completely fine with Angelica taking the lead on healing, while the rest of them press the villagers for answers. But Angelica cuts in and mocks her. She claims she won't trust her work at all because apothecaries are just people hawking fake medicine for a ridiculous price. That hits a nerve, and Lot fires back that the church is just as bad. She's only trying to help people and she's not finished yet. He's calling them out, saying a ton of saints whip out flashy, high-level magic just to have a reason to jack up those insane fees. Angelica just locks eyes with her, totally stunned that Lot's got that huge mouth. Kurtz's blade snaps into a sudden flash between the two women, slicing through the tension right on the edge of exploding. Kurt locks eyes with them and snaps, "That's enough," stepping in to block the saint, making it brutally clear if she steps closer, he won't spare her, not even if she's a saint. Angelica just turns and walks off, flashing that smug little line about them showing her something interesting, while the rest of the crew shout after her. Lot just stands there completely shell-shocked, like he can't even process what he's been through. That night, the whole crew funnels into a tavern, clinks up their glasses, and finally lets their guard down. As they dig in, Schild blurts out that he wishes the others had tagged along, but Ixia shoots back that Lot is wiped out beyond words. Ixia admits she was terrified back there, and she's sure they'd have been in real trouble if Kurt hadn't stepped in. The talk suddenly flips to why Lot and Kurt ditched their old party, because come on, they're not your average adventurers. Beneath the night sky, the whole crew stuffs themselves until they're stuffed to the brim. Then suddenly, someone shouts from the dark. Yato's about to leave when a random stranger suddenly blocks his path, and there's something in the guy's hands that looks ridiculously valuable. Two thugs slam into his path and demand the magic sword, because they caught him with the saint just earlier. Yato's not backing down, he shuts them down hard like, "No way, you church punks really think you can pull this off." One guy just stares at him, dead calm, and says it's no big deal, as long as nobody catches them. So he figures they can just lie and claim they recovered the sword, and nobody will ever question a thing. Ixia steps forward, screams that she'll never let anyone lay a hand on her friends, and the guy just shrugs it off like she's annoying him. He orders Lot to stay back, then slams into her. She reels away in pain, and Yato just watches the whole nightmare unfold. Suddenly, Angelica crashes in and barks at him to cut the crap, then lands a brutal kick that hurls him flying back. Angelica refuses to budge as the church guys finally clock how badly they messed up, because the Grand Saint has arrived. Angelica shrugs off the thugs, turns to Lot, and blurts out that she's sorry she let her get hurt. Yato and Shile just freeze, completely stunned by what they witnessed. Then Yato finally snaps out of it and finds his voice in. She thanks her, but Angelica is already sprinting to the next move. She offers to pay for everyone's meal to make up for the mess, even while Lot and the guys insist they don't want to feel like they're imposing. She winks at them and laughs it off like, "Don't be shy, let me do all this for you," because she never takes no for an answer. A mountain of food is slammed onto the table and she points at it like, "Go on, dig in, and don't let anything hold you back." Lot is still so tense that he blurts, "Great Saint," and that sets a guy named Thomas off. He starts laughing because the same church thug used that exact nickname for her too. Angelica instantly snaps, barking at Thomas to shut up and stop laughing at her. Thomas swings in with a tray of drinks, tells Anne to stop glaring, and admits he only laughed because that fancy title just doesn't match her personality at all. Yato shrugs and admits the title's kinda a lot, and right then Angelica tells everyone, "Just call me whatever you're comfortable with." Lot chooses the name Anne, and then Yato leans in asking why she's putting off helping the village until tomorrow. She tells Yato that a saintess's light magic hits hardest in the daytime, and yeah, she hates the heavy burden, yet she still wants to heal everyone in one go, and that seriously impresses Yato because it's clear she actually has a real plan. Angelica clamps Thomas in a brutal headlock and demands to know what he meant when he called her, surprisingly, something. He screams from the pain while laughing at the chaos. And then the party starts to die down as Thomas sets his empty glass on the table, groaning that he definitely overdid it tonight. Angelica decides to slip outside for fresh air to clear her mind, leaving the rest of the group staring after her, baffled by who she really is and wondering about her personality. And Yato can't stop himself. He calls her strange out loud, but Thomas just stares at him. Claims she's secretly the sweetest person once you take the time to know her, even though the moment an apothecary shows up, she flips into a totally different person, which snaps Thomas into a more serious mood, so he tells the group that she's got her own reasons for acting like that. Then Scott blurts out, "Do you really know what's happening?" And she swears he's got the right idea. Then the scene snaps back to Angelica alone on the balcony while Thomas starts laying it all out, tracing everything back to her past, starting with Back when they were just kids, two total childhood besties, an energetic little Angelica would sprint up and shout his name because she always flashed a smile and buzzed with energy, then wouldn't stop pestering him to come out and train with her for the day. Back then, Thomas would stare at her train and laugh about how badly she loved sword practice, but Angelica just shot him a look and told him, plain and sharp, she had to get stronger. And she wasn't playing around, she charged forward with her wooden sword, yelling at the top of her lungs that she'd be an adventurer for real one day. Back then, it was just her and her father living alone, staying quiet and acting like everything was totally normal until that. After a massive blow-up, Mom stormed out of the house and Dad was left to cook and juggle everything by himself. Even with all the chaos around her, Angelica still flashed the biggest smile and looked genuinely content until everything crashed, and that's when it all changed. Right when everything started falling apart, her father suddenly collapsed from a serious illness. Angelica crumbled inside, fists clenched so tight her knuckles went white, and she couldn't stop asking herself why they had to get hit this hard, especially because he sat there watching her father waste away in that bed, and the crushing truth hit him hard. The medicine they were using wasn't fixing a thing. That's when the apothecary jumped in, saying the treatment only works if she doesn't stop, and asking if she was ready for the next dose. So she finally crumbled and nodded along, trusting every single word he fed her, then emptied her savings to buy that costly medicine, no matter the price. Angelica kept her chin up, whispering to herself that this rough patch would have to break someday. So she went into overdrive, grabbing shift after shift from sunrise to way past midnight just to claw together enough money for her dad's medicine. Thomas shoots her a confused look and demands why her scent powers didn't just heal him. Then Lot snaps back that she hadn't had any light magic back then at all, and explains why. And because she didn't unlock her powers until much later in life, Lot points out that yeah, it's rare, but stories like hers still pop up now and then. But in the end, her prayers hit nothing. Then, as everything crumbled, the ugly truth finally burst out, leaving it. Angelica froze, staring at the pills in her palm as it hit her. Every last bit of money she burned on that medicine was a total fake. She was fuming, tearing into that apothecary with furious curses, and her eyes burned with tears because in that moment she realized his greed had basically slaughtered her father, and the weight of it all snapped her in half. Ixia can't believe how brutal this world is. Then Lot shrugs and tells her the truth. People will do literally anything for cold, hard cash. Eventually, Angelica tore herself out of the village and chased her dream of becoming an adventurer, because she was deadly with a blade, and then the guild's test proved she wasn't just tough with steel, she could actually wield light magic too. 10 years slam by, and because she refuses to let anyone else suffer like she did, she throws herself headfirst into magic training, until finally she rises as a grand saint. What a cruel irony, she couldn't use a single ounce of that power to save the one person who mattered most, so all she could do was freeze and stare into nothingness. Back at the table, Thomas lets out a heavy sigh and tells Lot just how utterly disastrous the whole day turned out to be. The second he heard that name, he knew something was wrong, because the martial arts saint is infamous for hating apothecaries, and Lot just keeps chewing through it all while he listens. Thomas decides he'll just lock in and do his own job right, because no matter how holy the magic is, it might not be able to fix what's really wrong. He swivels to Lot and blurts, "So, do you have any idea what's really causing this strange sickness to smash into our village?" Laughed admits she's still clueless, even after asking around, because it's mostly kids and old folks getting sick, like a regular cold that won't quit. But here's the scary truth, the medicine does nothing, and instead of healing, the patients keep spiraling downhill. She replays what she said earlier that afternoon, staring off with this heavy, thoughtful look like she's trying to piece it all together. Even with that attitude hanging in the air, she tells him she's still convinced going to the church for help was the right move. Everyone knows a saint's healing magic is the real deal, because it hits fast, drags people back onto their feet, and the whole village can't help but light up with joy. So Lot strides out to the field, plants herself dead center inside a huge magic circle, and yeah, someone's stalking her from the shadows. She's not exactly thrilled when she turns, because Angelica is standing right behind her, all dolled up and absolutely furious she's there. Lot asks if this is the magic circle they talked about yesterday, but Angelica shoots him down with a cold snub and strides off, leaving Lot seething with irritation. Thomas starts griping about how much time he's blown this morning, and when Lot tries to hit back, Thomas just smirks, Anne is already moving. A few locals pulled up to warn them to tread carefully with the investigation, and later, right when it mattered, a girl thanked Lot for everything she'd done to help them the day before. Angelica finally breaks and flashes a warm smile, one rare moment, and it hits everyone like a curveball, especially since Thomas stands there totally baffled. How did these two go from strangers to buddies overnight? Lot shrugs and says, I hit some trouble yesterday, and the saint stepped in to help me out. Thomas still looks unconvinced that a high-end mighty grand saint would bend over backward for laud, but he can't help watching as Angelica stands right in the middle of a colossal ritual ground, and when she admits she's never seen healing magic used on this kind of scale, everyone decides to watch what happens next. Lot watches the ritual unfold and realizes the brutal truth. Trying to heal every single villager all at once is a mountain of work, and the sheer scale of that magic is honestly mind-blowing. As Angelica keeps working, Lot stays right at her side, staring at every move like he's trying to crack the mystery. Angelica catches the stare and blurts, "What's with the weird look?" Right away, the guy waves it off like it's nothing. Yet when she realizes how stubbornly hard he's being, a heavy sigh escapes her. Staring at that monstrous magic circle, Lot realizes no apothecary could ever pull off something like this. This healing hits on a whole different plane. She tells Angelica, yeah, you're rough around the edges, but your magic, flawless. So good that I wouldn't even dare try to hunt for a single mistake in it. Another girl yells that it's time for Lot to leave. Lot starts to say, I'm coming. And then Angelica grabs her and holds her back for a second. Lot whips around to see what she wants, and Angelica blurts that since it rained last night, the mountain trails are about to turn into pure muddy sludge. Lot is totally stunned when the saint suddenly tells her to be careful, but that warm kindness barely lasts, because soon Angelica adds that if Lot trips and smashes her head, it might actually knock her twisted personality into shape. So Lot ends up utterly stunned, while irritation sparks in her. As Lot strides off, she whips her head back toward the trees and yells, asking who, seriously, has the real twisted personality in this whole situation. Kurt snaps everyone's attention and insists they drill on dungeon basics first, before they even step into the Twilight Labyrinth. He breaks it down. A dungeon is just a pressure cooker of magical energy, and because magic lurks in nearly everything, that energy finally collides, and monsters get born. He goes on to break it down. There are two big kinds of dungeons: the wild, natural ones rooted in the world, and they're capped by physical space, just like the mountain labyrinth they're marching toward. These are the extra-dimensional spots that don't just mess things up, they warp space itself, swallowing whole oceans or skies inside, so they're absolutely massive and insanely more dangerous to handle. Kurt finishes his little lecture, Shield looks blown away, and Lot and Isha just stand there like, wait, these two are basically the same guy. They finally reach the labyrinth entrance, and Lot stares at the stone archway like it's staring back, because somehow, a whole year has already flown by since she last stood here. She's itching to get to work, so she grabs Yado's attention and demands he take her straight to the exact spot where he first unearthed the magic sword. As they push through the area, Kurt drops the bomb that he doesn't sense any monsters nearby, and the others freeze. Because if they've already run a sweep, what's the point of coming back at all? Lot doesn't even flinch. She tells them she's still going to scout the place herself, just in case they somehow missed something. They finally crash into a rocky wall. Yado jabs his finger and pinpoints the exact spot where the demon sword smashed down, while Lot just stares, piecing the whole nightmare together in his head. Lot yanks out a little bag and begs the group to help her scatter the powder inside, but Yado just stares at it and blurts out what it even is. So she tells me it's a one-of-a-kind piece she stitched together just for this investigation, and when she lifts the bag, it almost looks like it's sparkling. Kurt demands what that powder is meant to reveal, and Lot tells him she's using it to hunt down the real source behind the labyrinth's weirdness. And behind her glasses, a sharp look settles in, and she says she spent the entire night wrestling with the situation, until she lands on one final conclusion about the missing monsters, and she realizes the dungeon's monster count only ever vanishes for one clear reason. Lot throws out the idea they could be stuck in a monster house, and it totally blindsides Kurt, so he snaps, wait a second. But Yado fires back, asking if that's just a monster horde hideout, and Lot snaps that it's way worse. It's a phenomenon where monsters keep spawning nonstop because the monodensity gets pushed way too high. Kurt snaps that this massive spawn event is the exact opposite of what they're dealing with, but Lot can't shake the feeling it's tied to their problem, because it's all about monster numbers. As she wonders if a monster's rampage has fully wrecked the dungeon's mana flow, that's the only reason everything feels so painfully empty. Kurt snaps to the truth: if all the mana clumps in one place, there won't be anything left for monsters anywhere else, and Lot immediately confirms, "You nailed it." Locke backs up Kurt's theory, saying mana normally levels out clean, but this dungeon has a massive, obvious exception, and she fires off her theory that Yato's magic sword didn't come from a monster house at all. It was forged from one massive pile of magic, and Yato's stomach drops, because if she's right, magic swords and monsters are basically the same thing, meaning he and Kurt are just walking around with monsters like their luggage. Lot clocks the expression on his face and tells him it only holds up if her theory is the real deal. So Yato's still stuck on one brutal question: why a sword showed up instead of a whole horde of monsters, and Lot swears it all comes down to the location. And she snaps out that this room is so tiny, it can't possibly hold an entire monster house. She stares at where she tossed her bag, and if her guess is right, the powder should be kicking in any second, right as she hands out a special lens, tells everyone to aim it at the ground, and Yato just stares, because to him, it looks like nothing more than plain old glass. But the second he peers through it, the power knocks it out of his hands. He freezes and blurts, "What am I even looking at?" The others stare like they've seen a ghost, and Kurt demands his own turn, dead set on figuring out what the big deal is. Lot leans in and tells him the truth. Those powder clouds she just scattered are made from processed killer moth wings, and it shows the different monodensity levels in crisp black and white, like you're staring at a map, and the details suddenly pop. Lot points out the nasty twist: there's a catch, because you need a special glass to see what's really happening. She says it's completely invisible to the naked eye, which is why that first investigation team never stood a chance. And when Kurt peers through the lens, he spots a massive swirl of mana still lingering right where the demon's sword sat. He's instantly sure that disturbance is the real cause, so he figures they should follow that trail and uncover whatever's fueling the anomaly. But Lot tilts his head to the ceiling and suddenly gets this gut-wrenching weird vibe, like the whole setup is screaming something S off. She realizes the magic isn't piling up in this room at all. It's bleeding outward from this one exact spot. Right when it hits her, the floor beneath her starts snapping and cracking. Kurt spots the ground caving in, screams for Lot to duck, but Lot gets blindsided. Then the stone beneath her turns to rubble and her foot skids out from under her. Her eyes blow wide the second her balance goes, and then she plunges straight into the black. Kurt's voice tears through the air as she reaches out with her lantern, clutching it tight, dropping headfirst into the pit. The rest of the group just freezes, wrecked by how fast it all happens. Meanwhile, Kurt stares down into that deep hole and panic hits him hard, so he doesn't even hesitate. He barrels into the opening the moment she does. With clenched teeth, he stares into the dark like it owes him answers, refusing to lose her, no matter what it costs. The whole crew screams their names as Lot and Kurt vanish. Then Kurt clamps onto her tight, covering her head while they plunge deeper into the dark. Lot starts drifting out of reality, stunned at how she even got trapped in this mess, while Kurt keeps yelling her name, desperate to snap her back. And she just glares into the emptiness, replaying how life always finds a way to flip into disaster, right like this. Getting booted from her party was already brutal, but now she can't stop wondering if this dark pit is the place where her story finally ends. But Kurt refuses to let her go. He yanks her into his chest to soak up the impact from the landing. And, stunned, she stared up at him. Then, in the same breath, he swore to himself in silence that nothing, not a thing, would ever steal her away. He locks eyes with her and promises, no matter what hits, he'll protect her, and he's not letting her go. They crash to the bottom with a brutal thud, and Kurt groans as he tries to shake the pain off. In the pitch black, he checks on her, asks if she's all right, and Lot says she is, until she suddenly notices something. Something feels wrong as Kurt keeps her pressed to him in the dark. Only his hand slides to exactly the spot it shouldn't be. And just like that, it dawns on them both at once. Lot freezes into stunned silence while Kurt panics, blurring the air as he blurts out, "It was an accident." Kurt panics and pleads for forgiveness, blurting that it was all a total accident. Yet Lot just stares him down and snaps, asking if he's seriously an idiot. He looks totally rattled, stuck thinking, why did I have to end up down here with her like this in the first place? And Lot's expression snaps deadly serious as she tells him, you need to understand, you could have actually died from a fall like that. He starts sobbing and blurts out apologies nonstop until Lot finally lets out a heavy sigh, and she shrugs, saying she figures it's fine since they're both okay. Kurt flashes her this warm, steady smile and tells her he just needs her to be safe, because leaving love means nothing to him without her safety. She was totally floored, just staring at him like she couldn't wrap her head around how real and sincere his words were. Suddenly, Angelica's voice slices down from way above, roaring into the dark pit, yelling for them to answer and prove they're still there. From the rooftop, the rest of the crew leans over the edge, shouting down into the hole, "You all good?" And then Angelica bursts out that she's so damn glad they're alive, then orders them to hang on as she scrambles to get a rope. Lot yells back, "I've got it." Everything looks like it's finally turning around, but Kurt still carries that serious, tight look, like he's thinking, yeah, the rescue's coming, but nothing's truly settled yet. Lad and Kurt stride deeper into the gigantic cavern, and Kurt can't stop herself from blurting, "Wait, what is this place even?" As they push up to a stretch of water and Kurt slams the brakes for a quick drink. But the second they spot what's lurking farther in, both of them go stone still, frozen in shock. Lot realizes they've just stumbled onto a massive underground lake hidden beneath the village itself. Kurt nods and goes, "Yeah, that's what it looks like," so he tells them to go check the whole area. They slip along the edge and Lot blurts that it's been 5 whole minutes with no end in sight, leaving the question hanging, just what is this? She wondered how deep that cave went until she froze mid-step, spotting something weird and blurting, "What is that?" So she stretches her hand toward that white surface ahead, holding her breath, desperate to find out if it's truly hard or if it'll fool her. She shouts at Kurt, asking if he's got a pickle on him so she can test it right then. Kurt yanks the tool from his bag and shoves it into Lot's hands. Lot shoots back a quick thanks, then dives in, tapping the mysterious white wall. And as she works, her expression hardens into total focus the second a tiny piece finally snaps free. Lot's eyes lock onto the sparkling crystal and she can't breathe because she just uncovered it and it's way too unreal. Then the truth hits, it's a moonstone. And he gets all fired up, bragging that even something as small as this could sell for a fortune, while Kurt's face tightens with worry, because he can't shake the question of why a rare treasure like this would be sitting in a low-level dungeon. He leans in toward the rocks nearby, and as the light keeps flashing over them, his eyes catch it again and again as Lot spots them too and completely snaps, pointing out stones everywhere one after another as the realization hits her. The whole area is jammed with them and she's frozen in shock, clinging to her face like, what the hell is happening here? Kurt snaps her back to reality with a hard, deadpan stare, reminding her this is a formal investigation, so get it together. Lot stammers, sure she knows, but when she stares at the stone in her palm, it clicks instantly. That's the reason the dungeon is acting so strange. That's why magic stones swell in size, soaking up all the mana around them as they crystallize. If tons of stones like this are buried across the whole underground maze, then it means something huge because it's. So yeah, when it hits, the mana flow across the whole region gets totally thrown into chaos. For a second, Lot was totally panicking, but then boom, they turned out to have stumbled into a massive discovery, and she scans the loot and blurts, "Okay, but what are we even supposed to do with all this?" Kurt rubs the back of his head and groans that harvesting this much is going to be a total nightmare because, sure, dungeon loot usually goes to the person who grabs it, but if it's worth over a certain amount, you're forced to report it to the guild. Lot's voice cracks as he says you'd usually only spot 1 or 2 of these in a top-tier dungeon. Then he pauses, like he can't even finish the sentence. When Kurt clocked how huge this was, he realized there was no way they could pull it off alone. So he told her to check in with the guild later, cutting the rest of the words short. Lot of agrees, basically saying, yeah, let's head back to the surface for now, like the safe choice is right in front of us. They climb out of the hole together and you can hear someone shouting, "Check on everyone, make sure you're all okay," as young Ghidorah charges ahead, he blares out cheers. Finally, they're outside again, while the rest of the crew trails right behind him. The blazing sun smacks Lot right in the face and she squints as she steps outside, suddenly realizing it's already almost noon. After lunch, they should be back in the village any minute, still buzzing because they just uncovered a massive haul packed with magic stones. Lot pushes for a quick stop first, head back to the village, make sure everyone's okay, then go straight to Mr. Gonzalez to lock in their next moves. Everyone's buzzing like crazy after the find they just pulled off, all wondering if the guild is finally going to pay them back with with a huge reward. Kurt steals a quick glance at Lot, then murmurs to grab her attention. He looks totally rattled, tripping over every word as he blurts out, "So, once we get paid, would you wanna go grab dinner together?" But his sentence crashes before he can finish. She's completely lost in her own hype, finally stacking enough cash for her alchemy supplies, and she blurts that he should probably grab some new gear for himself too. It drags her right back to the days she was with Arnold, because he hoarded every reward for himself and left her with basically nothing to show for all that hard work. She can't stop herself from smiling because those brutal days are finally behind her, and for the first time, everything's turning in her favor. She shouts Kurt's name the moment he starts striding ahead. Staring him straight in the eyes, she bursts out a huge thank you, because she knows, deep down, she'd never be in this spot without him. Lot grins at him with the brightest smile she's worn in ages, and Kurt can't help but stare while they keep moving forward. Kurt shoves his face into his hand, mortified by how easily a simple thank you can throw him off, and when Lot spots his weird behavior and demands what's going on, Kurt just waves it off like nothing's wrong. He jabs a finger at the horizon and roars that he can finally see Guido Village just up ahead. As they close in, a blinding glow hits his eyes and he slams on the brakes, pointing out that eerie light blazing from right in the middle of town. A towering pillar of magic rockets skyward, and an enormous healing spell blasts the whole area, sweeping everything clean in its massive radius. The entire crew freezes in place, staring at the light show in pure shock, while big grins stretch across every face. Shield is spiraling because the spell is absolutely massive, and Isha can't help grinning once Anne goes serious. She's on a whole different level. Lot stares at the display and admits, with her jaw dropping, that the Grand Saint is way more jaw-clenching than she ever imagined. She stares on, locked in, feeling the raw force of the magic blast wash over them from far away. Clenching her fist, she feels it, her energy surging back to life just from standing inside the spell's radius. She bursts into laughter, picturing Arnold's face when he realizes they really managed to pull it off without him. Isha watches them fade into the distance with a faint smile, and it hits her. Lot just can't bring himself to be straight about what he feels. They finally burst into view of Guido Village's entrance, then Shield slams to a stop when he spots the gate. Isha clocks immediately that the gatekeeper is gone with no trace, while Shield scrambles to convince himself they're probably just off for lunch. The three of them just stand there, staring at the empty streets, stunned that the whole city suddenly went dead silent. Lot's eyes go huge as she realizes something terrifying. She can't hear a single person moving anywhere in there. She whips around to Kurt, catching that look on his face, and boom, she realizes he's clocked the exact same unsettling vibe. Kurt snaps to the group that they've got to move, like, right now, because he's betting everyone in town has rushed to the plaza for something big. Thomas yells for Anne as the others sprint in, and he launches into the real story of what happened in the dungeon, only to trail off mid-explanation. But even with him talking, a crushing unease sinks in, because this whole scene just feels brutally, unmistakably wrong. Thomas glances at Anne, totally baffled. Why is she staying so silent when the tension keeps spiking higher and higher? Lot freezes, staring at the chaos with dread twisting in her stomach, because she can tell something is seriously wrong. And as she whips her head around, she spots the villagers everywhere, shattering right before her eyes. Then Angelica turns back, dread crushing her face. Because the street is packed, people are doubled over, groaning like their bones are cracking, and most can't even stand on their own. Lot stands there stone still, eyes bulging as her mind scrambles to even process the nightmare detonating in front of her. Angelica reaches out like she's about to snap, begging him to help her because she can't handle all of this alone. She glances at the chaos, and right as it clicks, she goes quiet, stunned by how massive everything really is. At last, Lot finally finds her voice and blurts, "What in the world is going on here with all these people?" Angelica just shakes her head, looking totally clueless as she blurts out that she genuinely has zero idea. One of the guys snaps at her, claiming there's no way she could be clueless about something this huge. But she screams back that she truly doesn't know, saying things were going awesome for everyone until yesterday. Then the second they used the magic, they all snapped into this behavior. Angelica panics and grabs a villager, shouting, "Where does it hurt?" But he can't even speak, he only groans, helpless. So she swaps to a different healing spell, but the moment she does, the villager erupts into non-stop screams, leaving Angelica utterly stunned as she realizes this nightmare isn't slowing down. it's getting way worse. She turns to Lot and blurts out that she's already burned through every spell she knows, so what's she even supposed to do? And she stands frozen, trembling hard like she's seconds away from completely breaking. Lot goes silent for a beat, locking eyes with her like he's staring down something way too important. Lot snaps at her to calm down, then pushes them to stop and think hard about what's really stirring all this, pointing out that the second that massive recovery spell hit, everyone started getting worse, and that's when Angelica realizes she's right. While the villagers keep crumbling in the background, Lot fires back, asking if there's any way the magic just failed, but Angelica shuts that down. She says a busted spell would just drain her mana, not hurt a single soul. The recovery magic is finally working for real. Just look at that blazing light pouring over the village. She notices it all on her own, and ever since she stumbled back into the village, her energy starts roaring back like nothing ever happened. But she can't shake the feeling that something's off. Why are only the villagers getting wrecked, and what if swapping the magic is a dead end? Angelica snaps that she's already tried every spell she could think of, and every single one backfired, somehow making everyone feel even worse. Lot is absolutely stunned because by everything she's ever learned, a saint's magic never, ever should have made things spiral out of control like that. She turns and heads off, locked in her thoughts. Something's different about these villagers, and she can't shake the feeling that it's not the same as her or Angelica. Lot stands frozen for a heartbeat while the wind rips past, trying to slam every piece of it into place. Then it clicks inside her and she whips her head toward the wells, praying her gut instinct isn't true. She yells at Angelica, demanding to know where those villagers really haul their water from day after day. Angelica jabs a finger at the mountain and blurts that the water starts there. Then it slams into Lot that the Twilight Labyrinth used to be right there. Angelica is thrown off by Lot's sudden move and blurts out, "What's wrong with you? What just happened?" Lot looks seriously fired up as she tells Angelica she has to check something right now asterisk, and she's not letting this go without her help. She barrels over to the sick villagers, breathless with apologies, and tells one of them, "I just need a moment to examine you." The symptoms are brutal and insanely high fever, non-stop sweating, and a heart that's racing out of control, but the real nightmare is still coming. Lot leans in, closes in on the details, and sees it. Those villager eyes have gone a strange, eerie bluish. Thomas spots the fear in her eyes and blurts, "Do you know what this sickness is?" And Lot nods, saying she does. She desperately hopes she's wrong, but she blurts it out anyway, "Magic stone disease," then watches their faces drop as everything goes from there. That diagnosis slams into Angelica so hard she can't even speak, while Lot just stands there, dead silent. Lot explains this curse. A magic stone slips inside a person and wakes up with their mana, then bam, turns their entire body to stone. It's a nightmare because this whole world is soaked in mana, and even humans can't escape that rule. Lot explains that magic stones have a crazy power. They gulp up every bit of mana nearby, feeding it all just so they can swell bigger and bigger. Once a cursed stone slips into a person, it drains their mana non-stop until they're left empty. Then it swells with terrifying power and hammers them with constant, localized agony. She drops her gaze and her voice turns grim as she warns that once the symptoms fully take hold, everything spirals even harder. She tells them, plain as day, that whoever's in that spot is dying within the next 24 hours. When I traced it back to the source, that underground lake in the Twilight Labyrinth wasn't alone at all. It was ringed by a mountain of magic stones. And it's very likely those tiny particles from the stones slipped away, then dissolved straight into the water supply. Lot realizes this. If those villagers have been drinking the water flowing from that very lake for their everyday lives, then it. So yeah, it turns out they've been sipping tiny doses of magic stone powder every single day and didn't even realize it. Because it was the older people and the kids who ended up getting hit the hardest, losing their health fast was the whole reason. Because their metabolic systems let magic stones stack up way faster than anyone else. Lot keeps talking. She says that as of yesterday, nobody had even hit the final stage of the sickness until Angelica's world flips. After that massive recovery spell gets used, the symptoms get slammed forward too quickly. Angelica clocks it in an instant and thinks, if I can control the mana in my body and blast those stone particles out, maybe. Laft admits there's a slim chance a cure could surface if she's given enough time, but she's clearly terrified of anyone even trying magic while she's stuck in a condition like this. Lot says the real nightmare of this disease is the way it locks in. Once it's fully set, the victim's hands stop working altogether, and they're left unable to do anything. It makes the whole thing feel hopeless. There's no way someone in that much pain could still keep control of their magic and force the stone inside them to move. And if you try to fix it with outside magic, the stones don't calm down, they just grow faster, way scarier than before. Thomas stays silent, but you can feel the weight of what happens start to slam into him. Angelica snaps her gaze to Lot and demands, "Is there any other way to save them, like, literally any?" Lot opens his mouth, but nothing comes out, and he just stands there in the silence as the truth crashes in that, like it's already too late, once those stones finish forming, there's nothing left anyone can do to save the situation. Angelica starts spiraling, her voice fraying as she blurts, "What the hell is happening?" She yanks herself back to the moment, insisting she has to get to everyone right now, despite her. Her face tells the whole story. She's utterly crushed, fighting to keep the tears from spilling as everything unravels right in front of her. Angelica drops hard to the ground, the whole weight of the situation crushing the breath out of her. A voice cries out, "Lady Angelica," but she doesn't even glance up as Lot and Thomas whirl around and spot a guy. A guy stands there looking totally stunned, eyes wide when he recognizes them. Then he jabs a finger at her and you can tell it's really her, and he starts to blurt out, "A me." It jumps straight into swagger mode, demanding where the other holy knight is, and barking that she's got zero business showing her face after everything that happened yesterday. He blurts out that after everything that went down, he's finally headed out of the village to report to the church headquarters in the capital, but he keeps running his mouth, sneering at how a saint is meant to save people, while she lashes out with magic and ends up slaughtering her own townsfolk. He claims she's made such a massive disaster that her title won't last much longer. Then Thomas starts snapping. But he only smirks, barrels right in, and snaps, "So are you actually an idiot?" She stands there with her arms crossed, stunned that someone can be so loud and so proud while completely missing the situation. Angelica just drops her gaze, swallowed by sadness so deep she can't even bring herself to defend against it. The guy starts screaming that everyone can see what happened was a complete disaster, but Lot refuses to fold. She just tells him he's right about that part. She steps right up in front of him and lays it out. This is how it really works, only for her to say it happened because Angelica is the best recovery mage around, way better than anyone else. While Angelica listens, tears streaming down her face, Lot keeps pushing, insisting you can't just figure out that level of magic on natural talent alone. It's proof of how brutally hard Angelica has been working. And she even lays out the technical side, how it was basically a ton of positive energy getting flipped around, nothing that actually weakens what makes her strong in the first place. Lot ramps up the aggression, blasts the guy as a nobody, and rips into him for tagging along without doing a lick of real research. She jabs a finger at him and snaps, "Stop pretending you know what you're talking about, this is all nonsense." And then she leaves He stood there, completely mortified, frustration burning all over his face. He finally clocks who she really is, and the moment it hits, he understands why she's been yapping the whole time. He tells her her face looks weirdly familiar, then straight up asks if she's the same alchemist from Crimson Fang that got thrown out of the party by Lady Mary. He sneers at her, grilling if she's kissing up to the High Saint just to worm her way back into her old party. Then he slams the final blow by calling her miserable dead weight. Angelica just freezes, utterly shocked by every word. Her eyes go wide and she can barely scrape together a response. She keeps shouting and it's crystal clear. She doesn't care one bit about this party or chasing an A-rank title. She turns to the group and tells them that with her precious comrades by her side, that's all she ever needs. It really lands hard on Thomas. He darts his eyes away, clearly shaken by her words, even as he tries to play it cool and act annoyed. He yanks his sword out and snaps, "Back off from Lot," and the jerk's face goes pale as he bolts away on the spot. Lot snaps her focus back to Angelica and demands, "So how much longer are you just gonna sit there, looking dazed?" and reminds her that she became a saint to save people. And then she tells Angelica, if she doesn't step up right now, she'll end up hating herself. So Lodi eases her voice and makes it clear. It's fine to cry, but she can't let those tears freeze her in place. Angelica tilts her head up, eyes blazing, and says she already knows she won't need much, because she's heard that twice. Lot clamps down hard on Angelica's hand and yanks her up to her feet. Lot flashes Angelica a confident grin, realizing she's finally reignited her spark, so she screams to the whole group, "All right, move, we're going to save the villagers." Lot keeps the vibes high, urging everyone to move now, because they've got a job to finish and it won't wait. Which snaps the Gale party into a serious mood. all eyes fixed on the next move as they stand ready to back her up. Lot snaps that they have to smash the magic circle first, then Angelica bolts ahead, yelling that she's already on the way. Thomas steps up and barks orders, telling the trio to haul the sick people toward the town square, and they snap into it at once. Lot shoves a box of flowers into their hands and tells them to take it along, because the villagers are probably suffering badly. But Thomas and the others just gawk at the box, totally baffled by what they're even staring at. Lot points out that these are kiku flowers, the key ingredient people use to make pain-numbing stuff. She orders Thomas to crush them so everyone can finally breathe it in, but she warns him one stomp is all it takes. This stuff is deadly powerful. Then Lot rattles out commands, telling Ixia to snatch as many clean cloths and as much boiled water as she can and to pull from the pond, not the well. Ixia wastes zero time and bolts out. Lot freezes for a breath, hand on her chin, eyes locked in full-on focus as she forces herself to think it through. She locks in, mind racing, hunting for the one real way to treat this sickness, anything that actually works. Seeing those sick kids, she grabs the hope in her chest. Now that they've finally nailed the cause, they'll find the cure as long as they don't give up right now. She races through the cure in her mind. Magic stone disease can't be beaten unless she yanks those stone particles out of the body before they harden into crystals. Because the stones react to mana, the patient would be able to control them with their own power. But once the symptoms seize control like this, that's basically impossible. So all that's left is to push the stone with outside mana, dumping raw external power to calm the wild energy, then forcing the stone to shift. But here's the nightmare: this stone has swelled out of control, sucking the patient dry of energy, and now it'll sniff out any outside mana and try to gulp it down. If that happens, the crystallization will kick into overdrive, and she'll end up in even worse shape, meaning trapped in a puzzle, she has to shove out the stone from his body with almost zero magic, because the only thing that works is magic, and this spell listens to it. Lot drops to the ground, crushed by the reality of it, because she knows this is basically hopeless for anyone who isn't a royal mage or an elf. It's pounding her with doubt, but she viciously slaps her own cheeks to snap back, and she vows she won't quit because she has to pull this off her way, just as Shelds. He bursts in with one of the sick kids in his arms, yells to her that he's finally brought a patient over, so much for waiting around. A bunch of people point at a spot on the ground, thank him, and ask if he'll lay the kid down right there. Shelds shoots her a quick nod, then dives into the work. Seeing how tiny she is makes it hit even harder. Then Lot gets pressured with the question, does she really think she can pull off a cure for someone this young? She admits she could probably pull it off if she found a way to shove those magic stones around without spending a single drop of mana. But since she doesn't, he just kept wishing there was a way to yank the stones straight out of the kid's body, like right there, and that thought starts to bloom in his head while Sheld catches her words about absorbing the stones and goes pale with confusion. But he's not about to stay. He snaps that he's heading back to grab the rest of the patients. Lot keeps the idea firing in her head, staring at those stones and wondering if she can just draw them out like medicine with a dropper instead of forcing the magic to push them. Then she watches the kids march back out, and she's left alone to crack this brand new plan on the fly. Her eyes explode wide the moment it clicks, like a light bulb finally snaps on, and she suddenly realizes there's a whole new way to do it. She can yank those magic stone particles right out without spending a single drop of mana. So she snaps her voice to Yado and tells him to hold up for a second, only for him to already be slipping away. But he freezes mid-motion, snaps his head over his shoulder and silently asks, "What's going on?" Yado nods like, "Yeah, that's basically it," then falls silent for a beat, eyes sharpening as he starts mapping out the plan. He locks eyes with her and demands, "Be real, do you honestly think this is enough to save the villagers?" Lot doesn't pause for a second. She leans in and tells him, "Yeah, I'm sure we can pull this off." Yado pauses for half a second, then nods and goes, "Got it. If she's that sure of herself, I'm cool with it." And then he flashes her a massive grin and tells her, "If saving everyone means this, count me in. I'm helping too, no doubt." Lot stares him down and drops his name like it means everything, so clearly touched that he's ready to step up. Lot yells for Kirudo as he storms back. He's clutching young Ghidorah, rushing toward the houses while the kid's still young. While Yado stands there locked in and staring down the problem, he says he's got one thing he can't handle alone, and he needs help. But he slams the brakes and asks if she's truly sure about this plan. Lot shuts him down fast, saying there's no better use for her skills right now, even if she knows it's a lot to ask of a young guy like him. She just figured he'd put saving lives first and yeah, Yato's finally getting it, admitting she was right, then telling her to ditch this spot and find a better place to set everything up. As the guys head out, Lot stares after them, heart racing, thinking she just has to prove she'll match the fire Yato is showing. She nudges her glasses into place, and that glare flares like a warning as she goes fully locked in, ready to launch. She stands by the trees, steals one last look back at the village, then pushes everything into motion, asking if they've got a tent ready, and her companion shoots back that they absolutely do. Lot tells her she doesn't need some big, fancy, ridiculously serious thing, just keep it simple. She needs something quick to block the sun, so she can get to work on the medicine. Thomas barges in and orders the girls to hand that part of the job to them, then he squares up, ready to step up and Angelica gasps when she sees him, but he only grins like, I knew you'd need more hands, and then he sweeps up everyone who's still healthy enough to move. Lot and Angelica look like they can finally breathe, pure relief, then they grin at him and practically shout, thank you so much for the help. Angelica tells him he's making a huge difference right now, but Thomas just shrugs it off and says he doesn't need any thanks, he's only doing his part. He shoots a look at Lot and tells her he's counting on her, she's the apothecary, and she'll keep the village safe. Then he makes it crystal clear he's doing it for Anne's sake too. Lot locks eyes with him and flashes a confident grin, then says, of course, I've got it. Under the medical tent, everything moves at lightning speed while Lot zeroes in on the patients, and Isha's right behind him, pitching in to help. Angelica yells for everyone's attention, announces she's finally shut down the magic circle, and asks what she should do next. Lot doesn't hesitate 1 second. She blurts out that the first move is to get the patient's clothes off so they can start working, and then she grabs Angelica and tells her to help Isha wipe off all that sweat. Angelica flashes a confident, I've got it, and immediately dives into action. Lot wipes the sweat from her face and realizes cleaning the patients isn't just basic nursing, it's something far bigger. It's a clever trick to make sure those killer moth scales spread across their skin just right. She realizes that if she slips those special lenses back on again, just like she did in the Twilight Labyrinth, everything could change. She should see those mono-concentration lines flare up on their skin, clear as day, so she snaps on her glasses powered up with that special lens magic, so she can see every single move like it's crystal clear. Lot checks the results and instantly knows she's got this. She's fired up and ready to go. She tells herself all they have to do is wait for that last piece to arrive. Then, just like that, someone yells her name. At last, Thomas and Yato burst in with the goods. Thomas shoots out an apology for running late, and Yato just grins, saying it's all ready to go. Yato flashes a huge, confident grin and tells her, straight to her face, that he truly believes in her. And her Lot smiles back, shining with real happiness as she thanks Yato for everything. Lot spreads her medical gear across the table like a war plan, then breaks the silence and declares, loud and final, that everything's prepared, ready to begin. And she strides up to the patients and snaps at the others, telling them to start with the ones in the worst shape first. Angelica stares in total disbelief and blurts out, can Lot really heal folks who are this far gone? Wondering exactly how she plans to pull it off, while Loti keeps his eyes locked on the job and stays laser-focused. Lot stares at a 5-year-old boy coughing through a fever so wild it feels like touching him would burn you. He's been out for a while, but she's thinking that might be exactly what helps him right now as she squints through her special lenses, hunting the magic coursing through his body. When she finally sees the mana lines with her own eyes, she realizes his condition is way messier and more chaotic than she ever imagined. Angelica can't stay still anymore, she snaps, asking why she's just standing there, rushing her to hurry up and start the treatment. Lot says nothing at all, she just keeps glaring through her glasses with razor-sharp focus until she finally spots what she's been hunting for and blurts a soft whisper to herself, I found it. Lot swings open her equipment box, psyching herself up with one thought, she's got this, no doubt. Angelica stares at it, totally baffled, and blurts, what does Lot even mean by that? Then she spots the boxes stuffed with razor-thin needles and immediately asks if that's really what she plans to use. Lot nods and tells them the truth, those needles are how she tidies up the chaos, straightening the flow of all that wild, messy magic. Celica snaps, calls the whole idea idiotic, then snatches the Lot and blasts, shouting how insane it is to try acupuncture for this disease. Lot doesn't even blink, she snaps at Angelica to yank her hand off the patient. She snaps back that they're just burning time, and this is the only move that can stop the kid from getting left behind. Angelica stood frozen in total disbelief, and she could barely barely get a word out as he scrambles for the right words to fire back, but tells Lot it still makes zero sense. She ends it by screaming that she's never once heard of anyone using needles to control magic. Lot swears that using more magic to move magic is just the way it's meant to be, and she tells Angelica, just sit back, watch me take control of this. Lot stares down at her tools and mutters that she knows this plan sounds absolutely unhinged, while Angelica stands there, frozen, watching with worry written all over her face, and Lot tells him, if this is the only way to save you, I'm doing it, then locks in with laser focus, staring straight ahead, because she shoots back that no one's dying on her watch, then yanks the moment into action and declares the procedure starts right now. Lot snaps herself into work mode as the villagers crowd outside the tent, desperate for answers about what's taking so long. Angelica watches her, and deep down she has to admit it, she still can't make sense of what Lot's pulling off. She's convinced acupuncture is just a myth, and she can't even wrap her head around Lot battling a rare disease with no cure using nothing but a single needle. But then it hits her right now, the only real move she's got is to stay rooted and watch, so she just stands there, wrists bound at her sides, swallowing her fear and betting everything on Lot to heal her. Lot clutches her needle, swears to herself she's got this, and locks in, like she's about to make it happen herself as she closes in on Ghidorah, sweat pours down her face, and she pours every last ounce of energy into getting the procedure right. Thomas and Angelica just freeze in place, hearts pounding, holding their breath as they lock onto her every move, say nothing, just watch. Lot leans over the kid, whispers a desperate prayer, and begs the treatment to finally work, because this last shot might be the only thing that saves him, and the pressure finally snaps and she bursts into this giant grin, saying, thank goodness, because the patient finally snaps his eyes open. Lot bursts in and screams that he's awake again, and he's back with them. Angelica stares in pure disbelief, whispering, no way, this can't be happening right now. She checks him in a flash, notices his pulse is steady, and realizes his skin looks miles better than it did just minutes ago. Angelica can barely wrap her mind around it. She never thought something as simple as needles could really cure moonstone disease like that, so it leaves her hanging with disbelief. He had plenty to grin about as he explained that regular needles wouldn't have stood a chance here. Angelica glances over and shoots Lot a question, does this feel familiar to you? And it instantly leaves Lot frozen, utterly baffled. Lot clenches the needle in her hand, and right away, she feels something eerie pushing out of it. As Angelica's eyes blow wide, she can't help but wonder, wait, is this really what she thinks it is? She can't stop thinking about this moonstone disease, how it's impossible to cure once it's gotten this far, and then But it turns out there was one move that could flip the whole story on its head, and it all happened fast too. It all kicked off the moment Yato burst in with a solution nobody in their right mind saw coming. Lot tells everyone the tool she used isn't a real weapon at all. It's a needle carved from shavings of Yato's magic sword. She goes on to explain that magic swords come with a nasty twist. Once they get damaged, they start sucking the energy right out of the person swinging them. So she realized she could take a needle made from those pieces and suck out the magic stone powder and the patient's internal mana, because that sword was forged in the Twilight Labyrinth. Any magic stone pulled from the same place becomes the perfect meal for it to swallow and absorb. Yato scratches the back of his head, blurts an apology to the girls for not asking first, but he decides using his sword this way is the only move, because he's not letting that power slip out of control again, and both of them just sit there grinning as they watch him. Angelica locks eyes with him and blurts, I get it now, because this is exactly the move she expects from him. Lot clenches her tool and tells them to match her pace so everyone gets healed, then right as she tries to push forward, Yato shoots his arm out and stops her dead in her tracks. He tells her she has to take a break, and it totally blindsides Lot. She freezes, staring back at him. She pauses for half a second to let it sink in, then shoots back a grateful thanks for his concern, and only then. She steps back for a beat, tells them to watch the patients, and her gratitude hits hard knowing everyone's here to back her up. Angelica hangs back, eyes sharp on every little move, making sure nothing slips while everyone asks if Lot's okay after an hour straight of work. Angelica just flashes a smile and says she's fine. With a heavy heart, Angelica drops her gaze and calls out to Yato, then apologizes, straight from the bottom of her soul, for what happened to his magic sword. Yato flashes her a warm, bright smile and tells her to stop worrying, because she's the one who saved them. Angelica can only choke out his name as she's hit with the full weight of his kindness. Lot stands there totally thrown off and tells the others straight up that she still doesn't fully understand how any of it worked, especially. So how did Yato place those needles with that scary, perfect accuracy? To Lot, it looked like he knew exactly where to strike, no hesitation, not even a single beat of thinking. Lot spills the whole truth and says it worked because of that deadly moth powder. Angelica perks up and asks if he's talking about the powder he tossed over the body, and Lot confirms, saying that's exactly what did it. That the powder truly makes magic concentration visible to the naked eye. She looks thrilled by the explanation, but then Angelica suddenly goes stone still, staring into nothing with a face that screams, "Oh no, I just realized something huge." Lot snaps to the sudden shift, blurts her name to yank her attention, and asks what's wrong right there, because something's clearly not okay since. Angelica looks like she just saw a ghost, then she leans in and whispers, "That story Lot told me, is it really true?" Lot shouts again, but everything shifts because someone lunges for her glasses on the ground. Angelica finally snaps her glasses back on, squeezes her eyes shut for a split second to center herself. Then, when she opens them, her vision snaps into focus, and when she looks at Yato, she sees a nightmare. Tangled magic lines crawling over his whole body, and her heart just flatlines as. When she catches the sheer scale of the magic energy raging inside him, shock slams into her so hard she can barely breathe, eyes wide as she stares in disbelief, because she's never laid eyes on anything like this, and it leaves her stunned. She keeps asking what it even was, terrified of how anyone is supposed to treat someone whose magic can mess up like that. Angelica locks her eyes on Yato, trying to figure out what's so mysterious about him. Then Lot snaps her attention away, asking if they should keep moving, and Angelica falls right into step. As they start walking, Angelica shoots Lot a nervous glance, clearly rattled by what those lenses just showed her. Lot clocks that something's off with her acting, freezes and locks eyes with her, then asks Angelica what's wrong, but Celica waves it off like it's nothing, flashes a brave smile, and tells Lot not to worry, though you can tell she's clearly freaking out about the fact that the vision she had of Yato's skill, she can still see how he handled those needles with sick precision, and it suddenly all clicks into place. Everyone else swears it was just the powder pulling the strings. Thomas and the others rave about how killer moth powder works wonders and how lucky Lot was to have it, while Lot just stands there, uneasy as hell. Angelica glances aside and realizes, oh no, this isn't simple at all, because those special tools are basically worthless unless Yato can back them up with real skill. She knows that once someone has even the slightest grasp of magic, they'd spot the truth instantly. When she replays what she saw through those lenses, she remembers how the world looked in that exact moment. It felt like staring straight into a blinding, totally empty white world. So many white lines piled up so thick that they overlapped again and again, making it feel like she was right in the middle of a snowfield. Her magic power warps everything into a chaotic mess, and she's so sure no ordinary person in the world could ever truly set it right. Then it hits her, the one brutal needle poke, and suddenly she realizes just how absolutely unhinged Yato's talent really is. Thomas rubs his head and blurts, "Wait, can you really see those monolines through those glasses?" Then he snaps, "And why won't you just poke the spots where they're all tangled up?" Angelica whips her head back and tells him it could work, maybe, if they only had 1 or 2 lines to deal with, but the crystallization completely wrecked the Mona. This isn't some quick fix anymore. Yato starts to break into a cold sweat when he realizes this situation has nothing to do with any dungeon he's ever seen. And Angelica fesses up that all she sees is a blank wall of white, no hint of where the magic circuit even hides. So Thomas starts wondering how on earth Lot managed to deal with it. Angelica couldn't even process it. She's a full-on magic expert, and yet she still can't figure out how, when she's blind to this world, an ordinary pharmacist can be so insanely precise. She locks in on the clues, and one terrifying thought hits like clockwork. This can only end one way. It's gotta be those monopores. Thomas throws out the idea of magic nodes, calling them pressure points for monoflow, and Angelica immediately fires back like, seriously, can you even pinpoint those things in a whole mess like this? She's sure something's happening, some reaction only an apothecary crowd would spot. Yato presses Thomas on how many of those nodes are real, and the moment Thomas says there are only 10 in humans, Yato laughs like that's way too easy. But Angelica absolutely snaps, screaming that fewer is a joke, because when you actually crunch the combinations, it shoots past 1,000,000. She freezes in absolute silence and it hits her hard what she's just unleashed. Angelica stands in the hush, finally admitting to herself that her pride completely blinded her. She stared at Lot, tears burning at the corners of her eyes, furious that she ever doubted someone like him, or that Thomas might actually have to lean on her. But Thomas cuts through the silence, tells her she's shocked him more than she realizes, and Yato just answers plain as day, "Yes, sir." Angelica clocked that look on Yato's face and blurted, "What are you laughing at exactly?" But Yato just smirks, brushes it off like it's nothing, and she can practically feel the joy in him because now everybody's finally catching on to just how insanely great Lot really is. Angelica locks eyes on him, totally thrown off by the way this guy thinks. She fires off, "So what's the deal with our apothecary?" While Thomas can't stop singing her praises, leaving Angelica standing there, completely stunned and drowning in confusion over it all. 2.5 hours have slammed by since the treatment kicked off, and Lot's been locked in the whole time, eyes forward, mind on nothing else until the last procedure finally wraps up and the whole job hits its finish line. Lot finally slips off her glasses and forces a tired smile. "I know it's too soon to breathe easy yet," she says, "but the worst part is finally behind us." Thomas practically explodes with joy, cheering at the news that the patient is going to be okay for now. Angelica slumps in place, utterly wiped out, barely breathing out, "Thank goodness." Then Lot checks on her, asking if she's all right when Angelica suddenly struggles to get out a "thank you," choking the words. The girl suddenly loses it. She slams both hands over her eyes, sobbing non-stop, repeating the same words again and again, and she tilts her head up to Lot, her eyes shining as she thanks him for trusting her and for everything she fought to do. Lot gets choked up when she hears her mind drift back to the days when she was still with her old party room. Remembering it all back then, Kurt was basically the only one who ever stopped to tell her thank you. Even with all that lonely grind and the sting of being ignored, she kept driving forward, no matter what. All that sacrifice finally led here where she could say it out loud. She really saved someone. Lot finally gets it. She doesn't regret those days with her old party at all because they shoved her into learning nonstop, and now that whole stash of experience is a treasure to her, especially the moment she got to meet Kurt. Later, Lot just sprawls on a park bench beneath the night sky, soaking in the quiet. Then the moment hangs in the air when Angelica storms in, locks eyes with her, and blurts, "I finally found where you've been hiding." The girl stands still for a beat, staring at him with a calm, stone-serious face, like she's about to decide something important as he hands her a steaming bottle, swearing it's nothing but warm tea meant to calm her down. They park themselves on the bench side by side, both going dead silent while Lot takes a long drink. Until Angelica finally drops her gaze and admits she knows she put Lot through an insane amount of trouble. She locks eyes with Lot, sincere and shining, and tells him she's truly grateful for everything he's done. Then she turns to leave Lot. Lot just sat there staring at her like, "Wait, you're serious?" Because the way she meant it was way too real. Angelica cuts in and tells Lot that she's already heard "thank you" way too many times tonight, and Lot scrambles to find a response. She keeps her eyes on the ground, admits in a whisper that she never could have survived all of this alone. She lunges forward, snatches Lot's hands, locks eyes with him, and confesses that without him she couldn't have done a single thing. With her backing gone, everything would have crumbled, because Lot stepped in just in time and saved the whole situation. Lot just locks eyes with her, murmuring her name so softly, like he's watching a whole new side of that wild, energetic girl come alive. Until then, Angelica snaps the mood to a halt, shouting that they should just walk away from this and quit acting so damn serious. She tells Lot, "You're in my debt big time. If you ever need anything, just say the word and I'll handle it," and promises she'll be there no matter what, and Lot's smile snaps back. He agrees, until they finally feel like real friends, right up until the moment it all cuts off. Then she drops the bombshell. After everything that just happened, Angelica could lose her title as the Great Saint, and asks straight up what she'll do if that nightmare comes true. Angelica sprawls on the bench, kicks back, and leans in to ask Lot what she's got planned for her future now that everything is changing. She tells them, "If the church boots me out, I'm not panicking. I'll just become an adventurer like I've always dreamed," which totally floors Lot. She locks eyes with her friend, asks if being an adventurer was the dream she'd been chasing all along, and Angelica just nods like, "Yeah, it's a long one," and then turns out She survived the brutal loss of her father, got betrayed by a pharmacist in the past, and somehow still ended up becoming someone like her. The saint title was never the real prize, it was just a tool to grab what she needed, and when he finally realized that, his gaze lingered on her like, so that's the truth. Since Angelica's already mastered all that wild healing magic, there's no real reason she should stay locked to the church anymore. But Lot can't shake the feeling this won't play out like that. She's sure her friend getting exiled is basically impossible. Angelica smirks and says there's not even a rule stopping her from grabbing a side job while she's still a saint, making. Her eyes bulge wide as she leans in and demands, like, is she really ready to kick off her adventuring career right this second? Angelica sprawls back and swears she has this amazing vibe, then throws out, if Lot's up for it, I think you should let me in on the party. And that's where Lot starts too. Lot's eyes flare wide, she huffs fast and fires back, asking if Angelica's really fine teaming up with an apothecary, given how much she despises them. But Angelica just grins and laughs it off. She tells her she doesn't even care anymore whether she's an apothecary or not because she's got this gut-deep certainty that if they don't split up, they're about to witness some absolutely mind-blowing things together. Scott stares at her friend through her glasses, whispering Angelica under her breath while everything clicks into place. Then, she can't let it go, so she finally blurts out the big question. Why did Angelica even bother saving her in the first place? Angelica shrugs it off, saying she wasn't rescuing her, she was just saving the villagers, and Lot isn't buying a word of it. He admits she might be telling the truth, but it still doesn't cover the whole mess, So Angelica tosses out a new excuse, claiming it was just a guild request she had to handle. Yet Lot looks absolutely furious as he shuts her down, saying that's not the answer she's hoping for. And Angelica finally calms down. She admits it's completely natural for her to be curious about it, especially because the first time they met, it was pure hostility, like they were ready to rip each other apart. So looking back, she's shocked they can even sit here and talk like this now. Lot realizes Angelica used to loathe apothecaries with the same fiery hatred she once had for saints. So that's when the clues start clicking, and it finally blows the truth wide open. She realizes she's been staring at her friend through a totally warped lens the entire time. She tells herself it's only natural for them to save people, because honestly, she didn't want to feel pathetic and she's dead certain of it. Angelica says that somehow this whole mess feels like a total waste, and Lot immediately turns to her and demands to know what she's even talking about. Angelica whirls toward her and fires back, asking if she was accidentally born the wrong gender or something. Lot stands there with her mouth hanging open, totally stunned by how random and weird that question is, and then. But she snaps back in seconds, screaming that Angelica is the last person she wants to hear that from. Then the two start going at it, with Angelica insisting Lot is definitely the one who's off. They cut off the shouting, lock eyes, and suddenly the air between them turns lighter until they burst into laughter, totally losing it over how ridiculous they're acting. A whole week ticks by and finally, after that chaos settles for good, the story surges forward. After all that chaos, they finally crash back into Rimuru City, straight to Lot 1, where Gonzalez is waiting. Strides in like a storm, calls his name, and blurts that they finally made it back home. Gonzalez snaps his gaze up from the desk, relief washing over his face as he tells her she crushed it out there. He starts rattling off everything that went down, meeting the Grand Saint, curing a disease that shouldn't even be possible, and stumbling on a whole mountain of magic stones, because good work feels like the biggest understatement ever. Gonzalez admits that the report really blindsided him, but it's totally on brand for Lot to pull off something that huge. Meanwhile, Lot just sits there, awkwardly soaking up all that praise. She tries to swallow her pride and tells Gonzalez that it was really his call that landed the best move, but she's convinced the villagers would have been wiped out without Yato and the others, so she made sure they were sent. Gonzalez tells her that after all that brutal grind, a huge reward is absolutely headed her way. Lot only laughs, nerves buzzing, scared she'll end up disappointing him if his hopes run too high. But Gonzalez tells her the royal capital is already getting the scoop on the stones, so the money won't hit until the lake investigation wraps up. Then Lot pauses, totally stunned, realizing just how far she's come since this whole nightmare began. Gonzalez presses Lot for what she thinks will happen to Angelica next, but Lot insists the church won't truly go that far, won't strip her of her title, not after all this. Everything about this situation is wild. An apothecary who got kicked out of her own party still ended up curing a disease even a legendary saintess couldn't crack. Gonzalez snaps that this is a colossal disaster the church will absolutely bury, so the public won't hear a single word about what truly happened. Lot admits it's kind of terrifying. Honestly, banking on healing magic way too much can spiral into some real blind spots because a saintess's magic is so versatile it can wipe out most symptoms without the healer ever even figuring out what the real cause was. But she's dead right, this kind of healing is really just a fast bandage, jagged around the edges and not truly whole. Gonzalez adds that this time their sloppy precision backfired hard, proving that nothing is truly perfect. Most people agree, but that whole experience hits her hard, and later that night, while she stares at the buildings, she just stops and thinks about how everything has changed. She even says it. This whole mess hits like a truck. She glances at Yato as he just stares out over the city, and he already. But once he catches her staring, panic flares up in him and he blurts, "Why are you just standing there, staring at me like that?" Amid the lush greenery, Lot whips her head toward Yato and pours out heartfelt thanks for everything he did to get her back safe from the Twilight Labyrinth. Yato waves it off, swearing it's no big deal, but the truth hits harder. He's low-key disappointed, because he really thought she'd say something way more. Lot locks eyes with him and says, "That's not everything I came to tell you," leaving him dangling on every word. As she pours out how thrilled she is that he tagged along when she ditched her old party, she admits that if he hadn't stood right beside her through all of it, she would. She's got no clue where she'll end up, and Yato's heart slams into overdrive. He blurts, "Wait," praying she's about to choose the right turn before it all goes. To finally confess her feelings, Lottie leans in and blurts out exactly how she feels about him, leaving. He thinks his big moment is finally here, then she drops the truth. She sees him as a great friend, and her bright, respectful smile hits him like a question mark and it totally smothers the sweet romantic mood Yato was chasing. But she refuses to fold, stays bright as ever, and tells them both to keep pushing as a team. Yato shoves his face into his hand, acts like he's totally fine, nods along with her, and quietly swears to himself that this tiny stumble won't break his momentum. Lot flashes a small smile, thinking about how far she's climbed after her old group dumped her for not being worth it enough for them. Kurt ended up tagging along too, mostly because worry was eating at him as he watched how everything was unfolding, and yeah, even after everything that's already gone down, they're still out here chasing the thrill like it's home. Yato barrels in, yelling that he's coming for him, and Kurt just grins like, "Go on, bring it on." Lot sits on a bench and stares, saying it's wild how amped they are for a simple practice round. Then she trails off, but she dodges the topic and blurts out, "Hey, tell me, is that letter you're holding from Anne?" She raises the paper to eye level, double checks it's real, and then he breaks it down. This message proves Angelica has already been called back to the church. She says Angelica probably won't get bumped from her spot, like it's all fine, but the truth is that girl's just cursed with the worst luck. Sometimes it hits like a brick. She's really praying her friend didn't tumble into some weird mess again. Yato halts for a beat and asks, "So, is it finally time for Lot to show up and jump in with us?" Lot waves goodbye to everyone, says she's stepping out for a bit, because she can feel something huge is about to explode. Yato scans the area, baffled, and demands where Lot went. Then Kurt just smirks and fires back, asking if he's somehow missed the news. Kurt tells her she got summoned to the Apothecary Guild, and Yato snaps. He starts spiraling, asking if that exact man is somehow tied to it. Yato bolts off the moment he can, and Kurt's left there gaping like, "Why is this dude in such a wild hurry?" Lot bursts into the guild and asks the receptionist straight up whether the guildmaster is around, because it's been way too long. Suddenly, the door blasts open and a man bursts in way too hyped, grinning as he blurts that he's just relieved she actually showed up. The guy's gasping like he ran a marathon, so Lot shoots him, asking if he's alright and telling him to just breathe and calm down. He snatches her hands, gushes about how gorgeous they are, then remembers the dude is a total weirdo. Once everything finally calms down, he rushes to apologize for scaring her earlier, but Lot just waves it off and tells him, "Don't even worry about it." They slide into their seats for tea, and as Lot leans in, he fires off the big question, what does Tetrad need? Because she's got questions about magic stone disease too burning in her mind. Tetrad says he got wind of the report about her cooking up that impossible disease, then presses her for the exact method, knowing this was coming, and she scrambles to play it down even as she keeps staring. She stared into her tea and basically said, "Don't call it a normal treatment, because it is." Tetrad goes absolutely ballistic, realizing she used a demon sword like a surgical needle. and Lot is completely blindsided as soon as he starts praising her as a genius with his crazy new idea, Lot snaps at him to stop grabbing her hands every time he opens his mouth. Right then, Yato storms in and snatches them from the doorway while Tetrod's still mid-thank you, and the moment it hits him, rage starts boiling, because he's sure the guildmaster is back to messing with Lot again. He's about to snap and start yelling, but Tetrod barrels straight ahead and drags everyone back to the real point of the meeting. He grabs Lot and asks how she really feels about stepping up to the podium and sharing her success with the Apothecary Guild, and then what comes next, and tells Lot that a breakthrough method like hers deserves to reach everyone, leaving her standing there totally baffled. Yato just stares at her, stunned, because none of this could have happened without what she's already pulled off. Yato just stands there, stunned that Lot's hard work is finally getting the credit she deserves, but worry claws at him. Once everyone sees her for who she is, how are they supposed to stay close like this? But then, Lot just grins at Tetrod and tells her, yeah, I'm really gonna skip the whole presentation. And Yato is completely stunned. He stares at her in shock and blurts out why she'd ever turn down a chance like that. Lot tells her that even back then, they didn't exactly have another option, but they still can't swear the cure is flawless yet, and she's terrified that if they shout the news too soon, they'll put everyone in real danger. So Tetrod stares at her and finally snaps, she's right. But then he can't resist adding that Lot hasn't changed a single bit since the very first time he met her. He leans in and tells her she's truly an incredible apothecary, better than anyone he's ever worked with. Then he blurts, wait, making love. Then he gets totally flustered and blurts out, why are you acting like this out of nowhere? Blue, Tetrod keeps pushing forward, insisting the disease she'd cured was only one single case, and yeah, she can solve any problem solo, but she always loads herself down with way more than she should. And just when she's about to stop, however, he glances at Yato and says he's not worried at all. He's sure the two of them will be just fine together. Lot just stays put as Tetrod cracks jokes, bragging that Lot always has a dependable, or maybe downright terrifying, ally glued to her side. Lot finally admits Tetrod's right. She admits she's been coasting on her friends, especially Kurt, like she's done nothing but lean on them, and then she cuts herself off mid-sentence. She kept replaying that old party in her head, when Kurt barely touched any of her potions at all, none of the healing ones, and not even the support ones. She calls it out like it's unbelievable. He still slips out of the party just to run with her, while Kurt stands there grinning like a champ with a peace sign up. Lot grips her cup, stares down, and admits, no, I'm the one who's always been leaning on you, but Tetrod finally speaks up and hits her with the truth. Kurt leans on her more than anyone on Earth. He explains that support potions are just a quick little push for what you can already do, and if you keep leaning on them, you're not using them. You're getting dependent. Kurt never tapped into her potion power because he's a top-tier adventurer who battles with full control, knowing exactly what he can pull off, so. Never. Tetrod finally locks eyes with her and drops the truth. Her presence is the real power fueling Kurt. And that's exactly why he pushed through all this just to come all the way with her. Tetrod says he thinks the guy's pride probably stopped him from touching those potions. Then Lot is left totally baffled as she fires back, asking what he even means. Kurt bursts in out of nowhere, snaps at Tetrod that he's got no clue what he's talking about, and leaves the guild chief utterly stunned. Tetrod glares at him and demands, why are you even here? But Kurt won't say a word, just stares back with this deadly serious look, and that's. He tightened his gloves, then told Lot, all right, we're done talking, time to move out. Just as they turn to leave, Kurt lets out a heavy sigh. He tried to sneak in here because he knew it would get annoying. Then Tetrod shoots out a hand to stop them. He leans in and asks them straight up if they know anything about non-human creatures, like, not just the everyday monsters everyone talks about. So Lot leans in and tells him she's been digging hard into that stuff lately. Like, that's exactly the answer he was hoping for. Tetrod stares at both of them and says, if that's how it is, then you two might be stepping into a massive job sooner than you think. He lets out a heavy sigh and tells them he can't share specifics just yet, but to keep it locked in the back of their minds. Then he pivots the conversation and asks, so, have you thought about joining up as a real, official adventuring party? Lot shoots Kurt a look and admits, now that you bring it up, I realize I've never really thought about that before. Kurt takes a drink as the talk spills in about how party requests can rocket their rank and pay, but Laughed shoots back that she's been buried in work and hasn't even had the time to think about it. So Tetrod steps in and says he'll log their recent win at Guido Village as an official achievement. if they just sign up. He says that once you've got a record that powerful, people won't bother testing your skills one by one anymore. They'll just hand you the job right away. Lot looks completely relieved and admits she feared her own skills wouldn't be enough to land work anywhere else, and that has Kurt stuck on one question: why would she even say that? Until right when it finally clicks, Kurt's pulling an A rank solo, but Lot's stuck at D rank, because their old squad used to be stacked clear up at S rank. Lot clocks that her low rank probably comes from Arnold doing all the paperwork back then, but Kurt fires back, then apply now, because that's even more reason. He asks what they should call the new crew, throws out True Crimson Fang, and at first, Lot actually thinks it's seriously badass. She snaps out of it fast, then shouts, "No way, this is not some we're picking a fight signal to our old party." Lot decides to just throw them down as members and leave the party name empty for now, and Kurt shrugs it off like it's nothing, leading. 3 days streaking past as the group tears ahead toward whatever's waiting next. The sparring match turns ferocious as Gonzalez flashes a grin and glances back, taunting Kurt, "So you're already thinking of quitting?" But Kurt isn't anywhere near finished. He tightens his practice sword and tells him the real fight is only just now beginning. Little Mana steals the spotlight from the sidelines as her dad watches, and Gonzalez starts showboating, daring her to see just how brave he really is. Lot hangs back and openly says he's clearly putting on a show just because his daughter's finally coming to visit. Even though Gonzalez doesn't slow a beat, he hurls a brutal, earth-shaking punch that almost smacks Kurt straight in the face. Kurt just barely drops out of the way in time, drenched in sweat as he realizes that was a heartbeat away from disaster. So he realizes that even after blocking the hit, the power still rattles him, while Gonzalez admits he could get wiped fast if he ever drops his guard. That lights a whole new fuse in Kurt, and he snaps back, asking if the big guy is seriously still looking down on him after everything that just happened. Manhwa watches them and blurts that she'd feel awful for Kurt if she just cheered for her dad. Then she leaves Kurt standing there, completely baffled. The little girl whips her head toward Lot, grins wide and tells her no, insists she's the one who should cheer for Kurt. Lot looks completely frazzled as Manhwa shoves her to hurry and cheer, yet all Lot can do is stammer. He's stuck for words as the little girl keeps screaming, "Just do it already, Gio." Lot finally steadies herself, closes her eyes for a split second, and releases a deep breath like she's bracing for impact. Then she snaps into action, screaming at the top of her lungs, urging Kurt to hang on. Kurt freezes in total shock as her outburst hits, his face flushing red because he never saw her actually do it coming, which gives Gonzalez the perfect opening to slam a clean hit right as the cut. Kurt's thoughts get yanked away from everything. That hit lands like a thunderclap and Kurt's head starts to reel. His vision begins to fade on the spot. Right before his mind snaps into darkness, Lot is screaming his name as she watches him crash down. A little later, Kurt groans as he snaps back into consciousness and Lot immediately asks, "So you're finally back with us?" He just stares at her, stunned, because he's really waking up with his head sprawled in Lot's lap. Kurt jerks awake, completely baffled because Lot is staring down at him. Then she snaps, "Don't move, don't bolt up so fast," since he's still banged up, and she immediately says Gonzalez is already snatching a wet towel to bring his fever down. Kurt just sprawls there with his eyes covered, dragging out a heavy sigh as shame crashes over him for getting knocked out. Lot tells him don't sweat it because they're fighting an air anchor. Yet Kurt knows that's not why he really got beat. She tells him to let it go, but Kurt can't stop. He just won't be able to shake it. He teased her with a grin, calling it the silver lining, getting to hear her make such a rare, booming sound while she cheered for him. Lot snaps back, asking what Kurt's talking about, and Kurt lays it out. There's a whole other sweet little bonus waiting for him. While he recovers, she gets to stretch out and use her lap like a cozy pillow. Her eyes blow wide as her brain catches up to what he just said. And just like that, she snaps, screaming that if he's got the energy to flirt, he better get moving, while Kurt only groans through the pain. Kurt glances over and bombards her with questions like, "Hey, you good?" But she just sits in the grass, utterly broken, staring at nothing, stuck wondering why she got dropped so brutally. Then Tetrad barges in, laughing at them for being stuck together and having a blast this damn early. Kurt says it's pretty rare to catch her at the training grounds, while Lot scrambles to apologize for the mess. Then Kurt waves it off and tells her not to worry, so he asks Tetrad if she's here to get some exercise, but she snaps back that he should move for his health instead of rotting at a desk all day, and Kurt tells her to bug off because she's loud as usual. But Tetrad's tone turns ice cold and she spills the real reason she came, she's got serious business with the two of them. She locks eyes with them and declares, "I'm finally ready. I'm gonna make that job offer official. Stick with me." Everyone sinks into their seats at once, and Tetrad leans in to tell them the job she's about to hand over. It's all about saving a vanished species on one lonely island, and it turns out the beasts are none other than the legendary unicorn. Kurt snaps, demands if she's really serious about that unicorn claim, and Lot can't even process what she's hearing. Like, how could a story like that be true? Everybody swore unicorns were wiped out, until humans who craved their horns for immortality medicine started the hunt. Tetrad tells everyone that unicorns weren't extinct after all, because one was spotted and Lot just uncovered it days ago. On this insanely unique island sitting dead center in some brutal, storm-battered waters. Lot snaps his fingers at the exact place they mean, then blurts that it's an island out in the Demon Sea. And it says this place is packed with insane amounts of magic because those waters swarm with terrifying monsters, so much that ships aren't even allowed to sail in. That's the whole problem. This place is so unreachable that no one has ever managed to catch a single unicorn there. Tetrad grins and says you can't reach it by foot, but if you land from the air, that's a whole different ball game. So, she tells them right to their faces that both of them will be boarding a special airship, the one the Kingdom's Sky Knights used to get the mission done. Kurt is absolutely stunned and blurts out, "You're serious?" Then the moment gets tense as she starts to worry, asking, "Is it really okay for regular citizens like us to be on a ship like that?" She's still baffled by the whole mess, wondering why them asterisk, out of all people, were chosen to guard the unicorn. But Tetrad makes it clear this isn't some brute force trick. You need serious specialized know-how, and if they run into monsters along the way, then things get ugly. Tetrad grins and swears they're exactly what the job needs, and Lot just goes along with it, nodding like it's already decided. Tetrad explains the real kicker: management didn't just request help, they demanded asterisk them, not the Knights and not the Adventurers Guild. She tells him the deal is basically her way of repaying what they just accomplished, especially because Lot is insanely good. She keeps adapting on the fly, but Lot starts second-guessing herself, then realizes she's spiraling, drowning in her own thoughts. Kurt glances back and tells Lot, "Don't worry, I've got you. You're gonna be totally fine," and he vows that no matter what storms hit, he'll be right beside her the whole time. Lot stares him down, and the moment her eyes light up, she quietly mouths his name to herself like it's burning a hole in her thoughts, wondering if she can really trust a word from him that they'll stay together. Someone finally asks if they're ready to go, and then, before either one can respond, they catch them both off guard. But Lot just grins to herself, remembering Kurt's promise as they gear up to move. Lot smiles, thinking about how safe that Kurd will keep her on the trip. Then one of the kids suddenly screams his name. The kids plead to tag along, but Kurt shuts it down, because it just can't happen, while Lot hangs back with a heavy, aching sadness for everyone he's leaving behind. Then, out of nowhere, someone jerks their head up and shouts that it's finally starting to appear. A giant wooden ship rumbles through the sky, headed straight for them, ready to snatch them up. Lot's jaw drops at the sight, and Kurt finally realizes, oh wow, they're really about to board a real airship and take off. As they step onto the ship, a fully armored knight snaps into a bow and says it's an honor to meet them. He introduces himself as Nigel, the commander of the Sky Knights from the Kingdom of Canacomb. Kurt and Lot greet him, but Nigel can't hide the shock. Everything he'd heard made them sound older. So he blurts that he's got big expectations for them and asks if they're ready to leave and head out to the island. They shout that they're ready to leave, then rip a wave goodbye to the kids, who are sobbing and flailing their arms back from the ground. And just like that, their epic sky trip finally kicks off, full speed through the clouds. Everyone on board is freaking out as they stare down at the city sprawling beneath them. They can't believe how high this thing shoots, and the view is so ridiculously perfect it'll blow your mind, which is making that massive wooden ship look like it's slipping through the sky like it weighs nothing at all. Nigel strides over and blurts that he's thrilled they're having such an awesome time. Then that line hooks. She catches everyone off guard, blurts out an apologetic sorry. Then Nigel waves it off like, it's totally fine, even though it's honestly rare to see a girl this obsessed with a ship like this. He starts geeking out hard, breaking down how the ship's tip is carved to slice straight through the air, and how the mast is set just right to ride the wind. Nigel is totally shell-shocked, staring at her like, how do you know all this technical stuff when you just spotted the ship for the very first time today? He tells her she's absolutely magnificent, and Kurt just stands there like he's watched this exact scene 100 times already. Nigel straight up admits he's obsessed with her vibe, then offers to take them both to see a secret spot aboard the ship. Lot is completely losing it over the ship's steering wheel, practically gushing about how perfect the whole setup is. She thanks Nigel for the tour, but he flips it, says he should be the one grateful, and it completely throws her for a loop. Nigel cracks open a tiny hatch in the pillar and orders her to see what's hiding inside. Lot's jaw drops. She can't believe what she's seeing because the magic stone fueling the ship is absolutely massive. Nigel tells them these stones are what keep ships floating in the sky, and now that Lot and her crew cracked that mine, the kingdom's budget is soaring higher than ever. He keeps firing off more ship tech for her to see, and Lot soaks it up like it's pure gold, but Kurt just hangs back in the shadows. He wears this weird, silent stare, like his mind is trapped in his own head. Lot clocks his concern and asks what's wrong, but Kurt waves it off like it's nothing. She figures he's probably just seasick and nods to herself, watching his weird behavior like, yeah, he's definitely not feeling great. A woman suddenly stumbles and smashes right into Kurt, and a sharp little yelp bursts out of her. Kurt leans in and asks if she's okay after the collision, but she just sits there utterly stunned, and she glances at the woman who just struck him, then wonders if those others are knights too, decked out like royalty. Kurt doesn't blurt it, but the thought hits him anyway. It'd be awesome to see Lot in fancy clothes like that every so often. A wild image of her rocking every kind of dress slams into his mind, and his face burns red with an uncontrollable blush. Lot grabs him on the spot, calls out his blush, and stares him down with a suspicious look that screams, "What are you hiding?" She's sure she finally cracked him, grinning as she taunts him that even he's got a huge soft spot for cute girls. Kurt scrambles to find the right words, but Lot just turns and walks off. Now he's stuck there, panicking, shouting after her like he can't believe it. The next morning rolls in, and up in the sky the airship is still grinding forward, still leaving its trail overhead, but then Kurt catches his shape on the horizon and his whole body locks up while Lot blurts, "So is that finally it?" They both lean over the edge, locking eyes with the water below, because they've finally reached the pitch-black, deadly demon sea. The water down there is pitch black, the current churns like it's ready to rip someone apart, and the whole place oozes pure, spine-tingling dread as Kurt peers ahead and tells Lot they're right on the edge of the island, then shoots her a question. "You sure you're ready for this?" Lot insists she's sure, then her eyes catch something twisted in the far distance, and she blurts out, "What is that?" She peers over her glasses, fear creeping in fast, like the next second is about to explode into something terrible. Then bam, someone screams, "Monsters are coming for us," and both of them freeze mid-breath, totally blindsided. Her eyes go huge as she cranes her neck to the sky, and the words choke in her throat because the sky suddenly erupts with wyverns swarming the airship, snapping tighter and faster as they close in, and Lot can't process it because this attack feels like it came out of nowhere. Then someone nearby starts screaming in pure terror. She spots those same fancy girls from yesterday getting into serious trouble, and one of them panics because her magic won't activate. Lot snatches a potion, whips around in a blur, and yells at them to watch out, because things are about to get a whole lot worse. Lot snaps at the girls for shooting blindly, warning them that every miss will only enrage the monsters. So, Kurt storms in to make sure everyone's okay, and one of the girls practically exhales with relief the second she sees him. The girl bolts into a full-on sprint, screaming for help, and leaves everyone wondering whether those so-called squad members are really with them. Nigel flashes them an apology, promises he'll lay everything out later, and tells them, look, he knows they're in the middle of a fight right now. Kurt yanks his sword free and declares he's got everyone covered, holding the line and refusing to back up as he yells for Commander Nigel to step in, take the reins, and start barking orders at the whole crew. Up in the sky, a wyvern gathers power for a blazing blast, then bombards the ship with wave after wave of crackling energy shots. Kurt rockets into the chaos, sprinting toward the beast to smash it down before it can wreck even more. But he snaps to a halt, eyes wide with shock, because he can't slice through it no matter what he tries. The monsters are just out of reach, and that huge swarm circling the ship is starting to feel impossible to survive. Commander Nigel screams at the crew to slam the ship to its absolute limit, because they need more speed, or it's game over. Then the driver slams back, shouting that they're already going as fast as they can. Kurt locks eyes on the monsters barreling closer, clenches his teeth, and whispers to himself that, at this pace, they're absolutely going to catch up to the... He rushes toward the ship, then he glances over, and there's Lot, standing frozen with her face twisted like she's cooking up some secret idea. Kurt blurts her name and demands, "So, do you actually have a plan to get us out of here?" Kurt drops his gaze and blurts out that there's only one way through, but he's clearly not sold on it. Lot tells Kurt to just say it already, but Kurt starts explaining. Then he slams on the brakes, terrified he's about to. Right before they're about to die, Lot snaps, loses her patience, and demands to know why he's stalling, because... Then it hits her, this plan is straight up deadly, and the fear starts to rattle through her as she trembles, thinking the risk is way too high. And when fear creeps in over what happens if he fails, Kurt glances back at her, calm as a blade, and tells her with total confidence that it'll be fine. Kurt locks eyes with her, demands she trust him, swears he's got this, and then he flashes that confident smile as he swears, whatever hits him next, he'll handle it all with the plan. So Lot locks eyes for a beat, then finally blurts out, "All right, I get it," like she's been swept into it. She's in. She rockets across the deck, shouting for Nigel, and demands, "Got a minute to talk." She looks shaky, like her courage is barely holding on, but she tells herself, just go for it, because there's literally no other option. Nigel hears the plan and snaps, demanding if she's out of her mind, because one tiny slip would get them all wiped out. Kurt barrels in beside her, snapping at the commander that Lot isn't just some run-of-the-mill apothecary. He glances at her and declares that this strategy of hers has a rock-solid reason driving it. Lot stares at him through her glasses, eyes locked, and confirms it. She's already got this handled. She whips back to Nigel and almost begs him to tag along. Time's running out. Nigel's face is pure stress, but when he sees they're both pushing, he finally caves. He takes a breath, steels himself, and says, "All right, here goes nothing." He storms out, blasts a shout to pull his crew in, and roars, "Furl the sails right now, because this." She leaves the whole night squad frozen in stunned silence, and Lot keeps her eyes on them, sweating hard as she waits to see if they'll finally hear her. One crew member blurts out in disbelief, yelling, "What is the captain thinking?" And right away, the rest of the knights are just as stunned. Then another soldier blurts to the captain, "Why are you making this reckless move?" Lot keeps her eyes locked on the chaos because she knows exactly how much rides on what happens next as the crew snaps that if they slow down, the monsters will slam right back into reach, and they're terrified of the monocrystals getting them targeted while they're stuck standing still. Nigel locks eyes with them and lays it out. If this wild plan hits, it could be the only shot they've got to escape the swarm. He tells them plain as day that right now there's no other choice, and the knights are so shocked they don't even know what to answer. So Nigel's eyes go stone cold, and he orders the crew to be ready right when he throws the signal. They cut the engines. He makes it crystal clear, the second the power dies, not a single soul is allowed to move, no exceptions, not even when everything goes to chaos. Nigel slams the signal and roars at his crew to move. Right as a hand yanks the cord to trigger the plan, everything clicks into motion. He barrels toward the swarm and screams at Kurt to hurl the flashbang straight at the wyvern. Kurt tells her to back off and trust him, then he coils up, yells with everything in him, and she grips the device with the same fierce power. A flashbang detonates dead center in front of the monsters, blasting the whole area into a blinding blanket of white light. As the light dies out, the ship goes dead silent, because Lot just figured out wyverns have a huge weakness he's ready to exploit. Since their eyes only lock onto movement, they can't make out anything still. They just flail through the air, completely clueless. Kurt's fired up, he's like, "We actually did it." While Lot breaks it down, the light hit them hard, and with the ship shut down, it only looked like they'd vanished. Kurt stares up at the sky, baffled that that swarm was even that massive to begin with, then shoots Nigel a question. Was the ship just too big of a target? Nigel looks completely wrecked with stress, then immediately nods. Yeah, he's 100% right about that, but Lot can't stop replaying it in his head. Something's definitely wrong. The ship got doused with holy water to ward off monsters, so this should not be happening at all. Suddenly, a random burst of energy tears out of nowhere and slams toward them. Lot sees it coming, stunned, wondering why the heck they're the ones being targeted when Kurt reacts in a flash, he snatches her and yanks her back while he screams, "Look out. then throws his body in front of her as the impact blasts a cloud of smoke. And now it gets even nastier. Someone took a hit, the wyverns above have zeroed in, and they're about to close in for the kill. Lot freezes in total disbelief as the air rips open and twists into a massive spiral of raw energy right in front of her. She can't believe her eyes. A massive pillar of fire slams out of the sky right beside the ship, and if they don't move right now, the entire crew is about to land in serious trouble. The heat hit like a hammer and someone screamed, "If that flame even kisses the ship, we'll all be burned to ash." The fire s. Inches away now, Kurt locks eyes with the danger and suddenly realizes everyone's lives are hanging by a thread. So he grits his teeth and vows he will. He's determined to keep that promise. He locks eyes with Lot and vows he'll protect her no matter what life throws at them. No doubts left in his head. He digs in his heels, roars as he surges ahead, yanks his sword free in one clean snap, then vaults into the air and hammers his massive blade down on the dark energy, ready to crush it before it wrecks the ship. An armored knight leans over the ship's railing, hunting for any sign the enemy is finished, just as Lot's scream blasts through the air as the whole vessel bucks and shakes. One of the crew screams for the commander, saying the steering wheel is wrecked from that last hit, and Nigel instantly knows they're in deep trouble. Then another crew member spots it, the island they've been hunting for all this time. Nigel yells for everyone to brace themselves, then, like a heartbeat later, that massive ship hits the ground with a brutal, earth-shaking slam. When the dust finally clears, Nigel exhales in pure relief. No one got seriously hurt in that crash, while his scouts break the good news. The wyverns are gone. But Lot can't stop staring at the floor, and it's like guilt-s crushing her. She feels like this nightmare is all her fault, and everyone's life is getting gambled right in front of her. While the other survivors trade worried whispers about whether they'll ever reach home, Nigel strides over to see how Kurt's injury is holding up. The talk suddenly veers into unmarried women, and it leaves Lot so lost he can't even figure out what any of it has to do with him. Nigel leans in and tells you the truth. Without a maiden, you've got zero chance of even getting close to a unicorn. He apologizes for holding it back, but Kurt snaps, so why drag girls who can't even fight onto a dangerous island? Nigel says unicorns will only give trust to pure souls, and that means those girls are the only shot to get that creature to drop its guard. He says that the moment the local nobles heard about the mission, they practically shoved their own daughters into the knight's arms to drag them into the fight. Nigel tells you that sure, there are tons of noble girls around here, but he trimmed the list way down anyway, and Lot stares him down, straight up asking if he's really the one who decides who gets to tag along. Nigel fired back, saying that's not how it went at all. The last call was actually placed by Vice Captain Klimt. Kurt's face tightens the moment that name hits the air, like he's instantly dragged back to the nightmare of the guy they crossed earlier. So Nigel lays it out. Klimt is Duke Warbur's son, born into a family with crushing power, yet they only managed to settle everything peacefully because the dude could sway the other nobles, which makes Nigel think these families aren't here for goodwill at all. They're chasing a foothold in the Duke's house, and the real kicker is the girls are trying to raise their own value too. Lot finally starts snapping the pieces together and asks if this is really all about getting the unicorn's blessing, because anyone the unicorn favors receives a special gift meant to grant perfect health, ward off sickness, and ensure a safe childbirth. So Nigel tells her she's shockingly well-informed, and she shrugs like, I just saw it in some old records once. Kurt grills him, so that noble girl really trudged all this way just to marry into a better family, and Lot snaps, being a noble lady is brutal, but Kurt shrugs, yeah, I wouldn't want someone like that anywhere near me. That night, the airship work finally clicks into place, finished. Lot and Kurt slip out into the woods to hunt for food and grab more potion supplies, and as they head down the path, Kurt blurts out how lucky they are that Lot had her potions ready, only for Lot to fumble through her reply, clearly distracted. Kurt clocks it, she's not acting like herself, and he can't help thinking she looks seriously crushed. Then he spots something far off and shouts for Lot to look, snapping her attention before she's ready. Lot stares into the forest, stunned as glowing lights blaze through the air, and Kurt straight up admits they're hunting thunderbugs, and yeah, the whole scene looks downright magical. Lot can't tear her gaze away, and she blurts out that this view is absolutely breathtaking, and Kurt keeps his eyes on her, murmurs her name under his breath, and tells her plainly, If she's safe, then nothing else matters to him. The peaceful calm shatters the second Nigel bursts in to announce it's time to swap watch shifts, and both of them jump in surprise. Lot tells Kurt to get moving, but she pauses for a split second like there's a whole other thought clawing at her brain. Right before she can even speak, Nigel barges in, blurts out an apology for interrupting, and asks if every adventurer is this incredible. Kurt keeps it honest and points out that they haven't even been working together for long, and then lauded. She admits it hit her hard, seeing everyone bust their backs to save the ship. She can't stop wondering why they're being so sweet to her, especially when she's convinced this whole disaster happened because of her. But Nigel cuts her off on the spot and tells her to stop, because no matter what she does, the airship's going down and things are already too far gone. He makes sure she hears it loud and clear. He tells her they're grateful for how fast she healed the crew, like she didn't just help, she basically saved everyone, and says their own magic still wouldn't have cut it by itself. Nigel whips around to Kurt and tells him, straight up, that he was a massive help in keeping the Wyvern attacks under control. Then he fired off a sincere thank you, making sure both of them knew exactly how grateful he was they'd been there with him. Nigel nods along and Lot says, let's all do everything we can to get home safe, while Kurt leans in and goes, I'm counting on you. The very next morning, Commander Nigel herded everyone together and laid out what came next, breaking their mission into 3 clear parts so nobody would get lost, and their mission is clear: grab food and water, patch up the airship, and keep the unicorn safe, while Nigel's crew tackles the ship repairs. Nigel says the unicorn is the goal, but they've got to scout first, because their magic can't keep everyone hydrated. He yells over a few of his men, then tells Lot and Kurt they're teaming up to explore the island together. And the soldiers snap to attention and roar that they've got it, ready to follow every order without even a second of hesitation. Nigel points to Simic, Gerald, and Nadal, and the 3 of them practically fizz with energy, ready to jump in and help out, no doubt about it. Lot flashes a huge grin and tells them she's thrilled to work with them, but she instantly demands they go hunt down water right now. One of the guys looks totally freaked out and blurts, so how are we even supposed to find something to drink on an island surrounded by a demonic sea? The guys look totally on edge about the water situation, but Lot steps in and tells them they've got nothing to fear. She's wearing pure confidence, and then she says, guess what, yesterday we finally landed a real, solid laid, and just like that they stride right up to a massive, glittering lake trapped between towering cliffs. One soldier is completely stunned and blurts out, how did you even know this place exists? She asks if they remember those glowing thunderbugs from yesterday, and the guy's brain starts snapping into place. Lot tells him those bugs only swarm around spotless, clean water, so once they followed the glow, finding the lake was shockingly simple. The guy can't help but stare in awe, and Kurt snaps, I wouldn't expect anything less from a pro like Lot. Once they finally uncovered water, Kurt declares this place their new base, and pushes everyone to hunt for food next. Lot orders the guys to haul in nuts and fruit while she scans the mushrooms, hunting for anything poisonous and making sure they don't get the wrong bite in. And Kurt calls her over a minute later, shows her what he discovered, and asks straight up if it's really safe to eat. Lot points at the fruit and calls it a shiver cherry, shouting that it's totally safe to eat, because it's ridiculously juicy, insanely sweet. Kurt leans in for a closer look, tries it himself, and instantly nods like, yep, this tastes amazing. So Lot totally starts geeking out, telling you how you can boil the seeds into jam or brew tea using the dried peels. She ends it by basically saying, this is top tier, and Kurt just can't help but look gobsmacked at all the random facts she pulls out like it's nothing. And then he flashes this huge grin, thrilled he finally managed to pull his weight on the trip. Next, Kurt spots a few white eggplants and asks for a check. She shoots back a quick yes, but one of the other soldiers bristles because Kurt gets kindness from her that nobody else ever gives. The guy crumples over, wishing his hard work had earned a real reaction. Then Lot can't stop herself as she laughs and offers him a weak, half-hearted apology. Staring at the giant mountain of fruit and mushrooms they hauled in, she finally cracks a smile and admits it hit way heavier than she ever expected. With their bags stuffed to the brim with good food, they finally decide they're done for today, time to wrap it up and head back. The whole crew kicks off the walk, and Lot's hauling the goods like he owns the place, feeling damn proud of what they pulled off in just one day. Lot says they stumbled onto some seriously wild finds during the harvest, and Kurt snaps his head up the second he catches the scent, then points out that her bag is spilling out the most incredible smell. He presses her for answers about whether she's hiding something, and Lot panics, Then she tries to play it cool, insisting it wasn't exactly a secret, but Then she yanks out these gigantic mushrooms and Kurt's jaw drops as he blurts, "Wait, are those really Emperor Mazudek?" He's utterly stunned because this is the top grade you can possibly get, and while the other guys are clawing for even a taste, Lot promises she'll share them with everybody next time. They finally drop into their seats and dig into a bowl of fresh fruit, and everyone's glowing like, "We can finally eat something this beautiful." Kurt's slumped there, but let's be real, he was secretly praying for a huge pile of meat. One soldier finally chimes in like, "This is messed up, we never even stumbled on a single monster to hunt while we were on guard." Lot's smile fades for a second as seriousness creeps in, and she can't help thinking how wild it feels to believe there's nothing dangerous lurking nearby. From the darkness, a voice hisses, asking if they're the ones who hauled in all this food. Nigel steps up and greets the newcomer as Vice Captain Klimt, and Kurt only smiles as he tells everyone they crushed it. Nigel tells them he genuinely appreciates everything they've done, even if it's all coming out like, "Yeah, it was that big a deal." Nigel pivots fast, asks how the girls they rescued are doing, and then So he tells her they've cooled off, but they're still wrecked emotionally, and that's when Lot realizes her gut feeling was dead on. He drops his gaze and says it had to be a total gut punch for them to endure something like that. And even though Lot is riding the same storm, she's still out here being wildly kind to everyone. Nigel locks eyes with her and says the vibe feels wildly off. He reaches out and cups her face, then locks eyes with her and admits he can't pull away, because he's never felt anything like this before. Lot only asks if her eyes look weird, and Nigel just bursts out laughing, because the fact she's not reacting at all actually makes him way too fired up. Then Kurt suddenly snatches Lot and yanks her back, snapping at Nigel that he's been lurking way too close for way too long. Kurt tightens his grip on Lot and makes it crystal clear, only he gets to tease her. Lot's eyes bulge with pure shock, but Nigel just laughs it off and blurts out an apology. He didn't even realize she was already taken. Lot snaps back to reality and fires off, asking Kurt if he was really teasing her. She's furious, demanding when she ever gave him permission, and before he can respond, she scrambles to claim it was all just a joke. Drama has her wiped out to the bone, and she can't help but wonder if she'll even survive the night and make it home in one piece.